Good morning. It is Thursday, November 8th, 2018, and this is your Cup of Jones. Good morning, everybody. Let me know if everything looks and sounds okay. Hi. Good morning. I want to start right off the bat with something that I mentioned in the comments that we need to talk about, which is we've got our payout from Patreon for the month of November. It was $49,700 even, which means we're $300 short of the 50K goal for the first time after hitting the 50K goal this summer. We did not hit we came extremely close, but we didn't hit the 50K goal for November. So what does that mean? Right off the bat, I'll say that we're still going to get a studio. We're still looking for a studio. Nothing's going to change that. And yeah. It's fine. $49,700 is a tremendous amount of money, a really wonderful level of support, and something that will definitely help us produce Easy Allies for another month. Absolutely nothing is going to change. But because we haven't been in this position yet, I want to talk about the various reasons. I think this would be a different conversation if this was August or even September. But now, so far into this process, obviously one of the reasons is the train has left the station. We really want to see this through. I already have a schedule to check out a property tomorrow. We're going to check out 2 other properties next week. And so it would not behoove you as our patron community, and it would certainly not behoove us to stop the process. I don't think that would help reinvigorate our community. That wouldn't help us get more growth. To be like, well, you all go back into a corner and think about what you did. All of you supported us like you support us every single month, and a lot of times at the end of the month there is a sponsor shuffle. We have people in the Tabletop Escapades tier that are paying quite a bit of money to be involved in that. There's Frame Trap sponsors. There's a mega sponsor, which is thankfully Jigar Bob again this month. But we also have podcast sponsors. So it's going to bounce up and down. And I think if anybody seriously wants to invest in Easy Allies to keep us above that 50K goal, it's a moving target. It's kind of hard to see where we stand and what efforts need to be made at the end of the month. And to be perfectly honest, and somebody brought this up, and I think it is worth talking about, we haven't really talked about Patreon a lot publicly. We haven't talked about the growth of the company. We really haven't given a lot of reasons for people on Patreon or on YouTube or any of our other channels to help us grow Easy Allies. I definitely want to ring that bell when we get a studio, and so there's a lot of fun ideas I have when we get that space, and obviously for the future, but specifically that weekend, just immediately, right when we get that spot, to have a lot of different events kicking off the studio space. So I don't want to do a lot now because I don't want that to kind of drown out the noise of when we get that studio. I want to just cash in every favor that I have, call everybody in the industry, and make a big deal out of it. And so that's why things have kind of slowed down in that regard, and why I'm not surprised why we haven't had the growth, because as somebody brings up in the comments on today's episode, I didn't really talk about we haven't talked about full playthrough Fridays a lot. We're not really pushing hard to sell full playthrough Fridays because there are so many things we want to do in that studio space regardless of what tier we're at above 50K. So we're going to keep doing that. One of the other reasons, too, is quite frankly, and hopefully this resonates with all of you, we owe it to you. This is, you have kept us well above that 50K goal. We are 300 short this month. We have made well over $300 in the last couple of months ahead of that 50K goal. So it all balances out. And I wish the studio selection process could have gone quicker than it has. So much of that is out of our hands. The one thing that was not out of our hands is getting a new real estate agent. I feel very confident about that. Our new real estate agent is pretty fantastic. But that's basically, you didn't do anything wrong. That's not the fault of any part of this Patreon process. And so I think we owe that to you. I think we owe it to you. I certainly owe it to you now that, and actually this is an interesting day today because I'm doing Cup of Jones, and immediately after this, Kyle Bossman is joining me for the community showcase, which will be beginning probably around 1 p.m. on twitch.tv/Easy Allies. We'll be going through all of our community submissions. And then I'm pretty much good for the rest of the month. I'm not reviewing anything this month. I don't have any big features coming up. We have a countdown meeting next Monday. to pick the next thing of countdowns. We're supposed to have it this last Monday, but and so I can really focus 100% on the studio. Tomorrow, Friday, kind of represents one of my first full days that I can really just kind of clear my schedule and go check out some new properties, and we'll be checking out others next week. So a thank you to that. I mean, you deserve it, and I think even if we were like 1,000 under, it would really take a major dip for us to really reconsider. It would take something that would affect our bottom line, and as I have said previously, we have not only hit that 50K goal, but we are saving every last penny of that and putting it into a studio budget that is sizable at this point, and is going to let us really invest in some fun stuff. Because not only are we going to make improvements to the studio itself, build sets and the like, but one of the major goals for getting the studio is to have two separate spaces, to have a show space and have a streaming space. And so we're going to need to double everything. We're going to need to buy more cameras, buy more lights, buy another couch. And so the ability to save up for that, I think all of you have just kind of the major core set of Easy Allies have really unwavered in their support in the last couple months. And I think more than anything, from my position, what I really greatly appreciate is your patience involved in that support, showing up at Cup and Jones, supporting us through all of our announcements, our ups and downs, the roller coaster ride that has been this studio search. And I think it's going to make it be all the more gratifying when we finally get there. Something interesting that somebody brought up, and I've been thinking about a lot, and I think I've come to a conclusion of why I wanted to stay, is somebody asked one time if we would change the 50K goal after we moved into the studio, because it's not a show that we're going to stop doing. We're not going to move out of the studio should we drop below 50K. And I initially was like, no, we'll keep the 50K goal. Why would we just randomly change that goal out and bring, produce something new that we hadn't promised before, or that wasn't done in the same way that all of our other goals have done? I want to treat that goal like other goals. And then I really gave myself the opportunity to rethink that and really try to see it from all angles. And I think one of the major reasons why I want that 50K goal to stay as it is for all time, regardless of where we are, in our Patreon and physically in a location at Easy Allies, is all of you did that. All of you earned that 50K goal. That, ever since we created Easy Allies, ever since I really got into this business, has really been the goal, to have your own creative space, to have a place that is not my house, that is not, we're not borrowing from someone, even though we will be leasing it, that we are using the money that we are making through Patreon to provide for this space, and then making that space available not only for us, but for our community, possibly for other people in the industry, for guests to come by, for family and friends to come by, to make that the home of Easy Allies. And even if we move past 50K and you look back at the 50K goal and it's like, what? Yeah, I mean, 2-3 years from now, yeah, they moved into a studio and now we're up to 60, 65, whatever, and life is great. But like, why didn't they ever change that goal? Because it's so weird to see that frozen in time, because that's not something that they're ever going to go back on. But I like having it be frozen in time because it is an accomplishment. Like, I want that to stand like a statue, a testament to the strength of this community, the growth of this Patreon, the belief in this concept, just what all of you have done to make all of this possible. I think it's really tremendous, and I want to look back for all time at that 50K goal and be like, yeah, remember that moment in time when we hit that, in terms of what money we were making, what we were spending it on, and how we were transitioning in that year. Man, remember that year, 2018, getting that studio, hitting that 50K goal. So this is a good spin. Jones should run for office. This should be called Spin of Jones, really, this show. Like, that's basically what it is. I'm the press secretary for Easy Allies. So let's see. Yeah, still moving forward because we owe it to our fans. We've made much more than a 50K in the last few months. Big sponsor tiers. It's easy to make sudden drops. The train has left the station. The expense has been paid for. And I want the 50K tier to stand in honor of the support you've given us. Those are my short notes for why nothing's going to change, even though, and again, we're at the same spot that we usually are at the beginning of the month, just below 50K. We're on 49.2 something, I think, right now. Correct me if I'm wrong. And so we're just about the same point. There's nothing really earth-shattering. There's no, there's nothing on the Richter scale right now as far as like danger. Things are slipping. Things are not looking good for the Patreon. The Patreon is healthy. Easy Allies is healthy. Morale is high. The review season, charges on. And like I said, I'm gonna have a lot more time to focus on the studio search. But we'll actually get into specific details about the last week. Somebody asked specifically about that, and I can give you a rough timeline to help you understand kind of more of the process of going into the studio search. But that's in for feedback for business. Want to get some Easy Allies business out of the way. Fun stuff happened. We played Diablo 3 Actually, I don't have the game we're playing next week in front of me, but I have it right here. Let me boot it up. Next week. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Next week we're playing Hitman 2. Huber is currently playing that. He's going to be reviewing it. And I'm very much looking forward to playing Hitman 2. Hitman 2, for a single-player game, is surprisingly an electric group stream game. I think Giant Bomb did some of my favorite streaming of the first Hitman, and so Hitman's going to be very fun. So that's going to be next Tuesday, and if you missed it, we played Diablo, and man, I'm upset I didn't play Diablo in the month of October, because I played Diablo a couple times, and I cracked open Diablo 3 to level up a little bit. I jumped from level 8 to 42, I think, in the process of that group stream. And Ray Luaza brings up an interesting point, which I was going to get to at the end, but is worth bringing up now. And this might be, forget not hitting the 50K goal, forget, taking a while to produce shows, or possibly miscommunicating things to our patrons. This might be the #1 Cup of Jones scandal of all time. I think I might do away with the Jazz. If you're new to Cup of Jones, this is your first episode of Cup of Jones, welcome to Easy Allies, welcome to Cup of Jones. When I originally created Cup of Jones, it was a show that I produced. So I put the questions up on screen. I tried to get them up once a week. That turned into once a month. Then when I started skipping months, I was like, wait, maybe I want to do it live. Wow, people are upset about this. And it was easy to loop Jazz because it was a produced video that I was creating. Well, now I'm streaming and I'm talking for much longer than, well, actually some of the Cup of Jones episodes did get to 2 and 3 hours, but this is typically like a 2-hour plus show. And we have this Jazz looping. And so there's a couple reasons. One, this Jazz is not programmed to loop. This is just a Jazz song that is starting and stopping and starting and stopping and starting and stopping for like an hour and 45 minutes. And just from a production standpoint, I think I can do better than that. I would like to vary it up, maybe get one Jazz tune for the intro, one Jazz tune for business, one Jazz tune for personal, one Jazz tune for editorial, change it up, actually have it loop, not have it end or begin, but have it start, have an audio track that is, like an hour long, and then that's what's playing underneath it. The other thing too, and because case in point today for my editorial, I want to talk about Defy Media a little bit, and that might be something that I want to clip out and maybe send to some fans, and or send to some other people that I know, or link, maybe post unlisted or something. But it's a message that I want to get out to some my fellow coworkers who I dearly love back at Defy Media, who just all suddenly found out that they're not going to be working there anymore, and that video forever will have Jazz on it. It's like anything that I want to cut out, any soundbite, anything I want to add to some other video, just Jazz. And I think maybe that's okay, but again, new viewers coming in, possibly taking one thing and linking it out. If I'm not aware I'm going to be doing that, it's just Jazz, Jazz, Jazz. And so I don't know if we necessarily need the Jazz, to get a point across. This is an investor meeting. It's not a Jazz meeting. As much as I would love it to be a Jazz meeting, it's not. So let's test it. Let's give it a whirl for this Cup of Jones. Just I know everyone's upset, but just try this new pair of pants on, and then next week maybe I'll tweet out before the episode of Cup of Jones, or maybe we can talk in YouTube chat. I'll be like, all right, how we doing? Has morale taken a hit? Is this Patreon suffering because Cup of Jones doesn't have Jazz on it anymore? I love Jazz. I highly recommend you watch the Ken Burns documentary on Jazz. I went into that documentary, same guy who did baseball, Civil War, World War II, Vietnam. Vietnam's really great too. That just came out recently. But I thought Jazz was pretty cool. And I thought Miles Davis and, Dizzy Gillespie and these people were neat. And then saw that documentary, and now I'm way down with Jazz. Jazz is fantastic. So he says after depriving the world of said Jazz, but that's a Jazz song you've been listening for 2 years now. It might be time to change it up. If we do the show live every week, I'm curious about trying new things, and that's something that I've been a very important Easy Allies issue that I've been rattling around in my head. As I said before, Studio Search continues, looking at a new space tomorrow and a couple next week, and we're doing live reactions to EXO on Monday. We did a bunch of live reactions recently. We did live reactions to BlizzCon. We had the Nintendo Direct when they just announced new Pokemon characters. YouTube app on Switch today. What? What's going on with Blood? Frame Trap is now on Switch. Nice. Nice. I played Just Cause 4 yesterday. Woo! I went to a preview event and I played Just Cause 4. I also played the first DLC that they're releasing for Shadow of the Tomb Raider. And the embargo was 6 a.m. this morning. I did not have time to put a video together. I might do a live stream or I might just record a video here talking about it once the hubbub today is finished with Cup of Jones and the community showcase. So, yeah, so stay tuned for that. Just Cause 4 was fun. It was all right. It was fun. I had a good time, but there might be some issues with that game. Stay tuned. But yeah, so that is the opening. Let's get into feedback for business. But again, just want to reiterate, thank you so much to everybody for the support. Apologies that we're not making those additional pushes to maintain us above 50K. But the reason you're not getting that full court press is because we are really deep into review season and are focused on the process of actually getting the studio itself. And just exploring every angle. Like, we really got to get, and I think that's one of the problems with the real estate agent is, like, we got to get creative. We really got to look at every single space and be like, okay, this may not be exactly what we want, but how can we make this work? How can we possibly change EZA to fit into there? Yeah. We lost Jazz because we're low 50K. Yeah, there we go. So this is what happens, okay? We're in this 49 level. Yeah, there's no Jazz there. Feedback for business, Brandon K. Gann. If finances, schedules, and all other concerns were taken care of, and you were not limited in any aspect about participating in such a venture, what, in your opinion, would be the ultimate collaboration, meaning with other YouTube outlets? Would you want to do a video series about a central topic? How about something akin to Kinda Funny Live, but on a larger scale and more closely akin to a convention? Maybe like a PAX, with every group and personality doing one of their prominent shows live in front of an audience. Who would you like to participate? Any idea about anything pertaining to this is on the table, and this is intended just to be a fun exercise, so be as wild as a final bet as you want. Oh, be as wild like a final bet as you want. I have three ideas. I've always wanted to make, speaking of Ken Burns, I've always wanted to make like an 8 or 10 part series where every episode is an hour long about video games. Probably like one video per gen. Just a documentary series about the history of everything that's ever happened in video games, focusing on the most important things. If you watched the CNN series on like the 60s and 70s and 80s, the 90s just came out. You can watch it on Netflix. Actually came out last year, but you can now watch it on Netflix. Love that series. Love the way that they tackle different issues and bring people in and really uniform the production spaces that they record the interviews in, so it all just has a really nice flow to it. Tom Hanks produces it, and so it's funny to every now and then Tom Hanks is like, well, I watched the moon landing, and you're like, get out of here, Tom Hanks. Like, you're not a historian, get out of here. But I produced this series. But I think that would be really fun. Some people have done that. There was a documentary called Video Games the Movie, I think, that brought in a bunch of people, but it's like a no-clip type thing that would just cost so much money to bring everybody in, and it'd be really hard to uniform the process because you would have to have a stage and then everyone show up on that stage. So you'd have to like either reproduce that stage in different cities or fly everybody in. But I've always wanted to do that. It'd be fun to do like an Olympics for video games. It'd be fun to do one big industry-wide video game tournament where I know Kinda Funny has had initiatives, and they'll probably be the one to do this one day at various conventions in the past. I know they had a big challenge at PAX this last year, PAX West, and we unfortunately were not at PAX this year, but that would be fun. And a lot of these things would only be fun if, like Brandon says, if everybody did it. Like everybody. Like every single phone call you make, that person says yes, shows up, does a great job, and you put that whole fun thing together. But what would really be fun, I think, what I would love more than anything, and maybe this is, I'm in the mindset right now because we're going into, we submitted our nominees, and they're tallying the nominees right now for the Game Awards. We have been selected as a judge for the Game Awards again. Thank you all so much for sponsoring Easy Allies and helping us stay relevant, stay alive, and continue to be a part of that wonderful show. And it gets me thinking when I'm doing this, it'd be really fun if you had one, like, ballot per outlet, and you go to everybody. You go to GameSpot, Games Radar, Kinda Funny, PewDiePie, everybody, like anybody you can think of that has anything to say about anything in games and wants to represent themselves, and you make this massive list of everybody that's involved, and then everybody gets a ballot where they get to pick their personal top 100 games of all time, and you basically reverse the number scale, so the one spot is worth 100 points and the 100 spot is worth 1 point, and then you just add it all up and you make a video. You make 100 top 100 series, and you say who voted, and that's, it's like, so if you're a YouTuber, you get, like, your channel basically represents that whole list. If you're IGN, one list. Everybody within IGN's got to vote, got to submit their own things, and you got to tally that up and send in just one list of top 100 representing your outlet. And you have the website, the official top 100 games of all time. I think that'd be so fun, it'd be interesting because it'd be like the one top 100 list you couldn't argue about, because like, who are you gonna yell at? It's impossible to know, like, who tipped the scale, like how do I know who's responsible for making what happen when, and what Resident Evil 4 is number 1. It's like that's how it worked out. So hard out on PewDiePie. Yeah, I'm just top of my head. I'm just thinking. The Angry Video Game Nerd, how about that? Alexander Zirianov. Each demon explodes in a beautiful fountain of blood. It's still satisfying to shoot someone's eye out. Slamming a knee into a punk's face or bashing them with the street sign looks as fun as it sounds. These are just a few quotes from Easy Allies reviews written by Michael Huber. We, of course, know that Huber isn't a bloodlusting maniac, but for those who discover your channel via reviews don't have such knowledge and can get the wrong impression about Easy Allies. Besides, such reviews can possibly give ammunition to those who believe that violence in video games leads to violence in real life. Do you see an issue here, or am I throwing gasoline on a non-situation? There's totally an issue here. I don't think it's a serious issue, but it's enough of an issue. And it's something that we had an example of on the podcast the other day. And I realized I wanted to take a note of it and talk about it specifically in A Cup of Jones, but stuff happened and I don't remember what it was. Maybe some of you who haven't listened to the podcast yet can pay attention for it, or stuff like it. Group streams in the podcast are good opportunities for stuff like this to come up, because it's 5 or more of us all in the same room trying to talk about something, and most of the time is jokey fun time, but then every now and then someone will get upset. And I think I can't remember what issue it was, and we didn't really have an argument on the podcast, but when it was over, we all joked about something. And I got really good at that because my mother's mother, my grandmother on my mother's side, had a lot of mental problems and was not altogether with it in her later years of life. And that was very stressful on my mom. And so my mom would mutter things under her breath in frustration when we would go visit my grandmother. My grandmother, you just never knew what topic she would bring up. And then you have my uncle, who's my mom's brother, Uncle Dick, rest in peace, Uncle Dick, and my grandma Louise, of course. But Uncle Dick really gave me my sense of humor, and he really showed me, like, okay, if everybody's uncomfortable in this room, I'm going to bring up something weird. And I think a lot of that has led to my ability to do this, my ability to, be comfortable on camera and really, try to be able to talk about anything. And one of the ways to do that is to come up with a safe joke everyone can at least kind of chuckle about when something's over. When the last thing has been said about kind of an uncomfortable issue, and you can feel maybe the hairs on everybody's arms, raise a little bit, or you can sense like, uh-oh, there's electricity in this room a little bit. It's always nice to just be like, hey, poop, poop, or jumbo boogers or whatever. And I think that goes a long way. Obviously, if it's forced, obviously, if people can tell what you're trying to do, it's that just adds to more frustration. But it's really interesting. It can just be something goofy. It's a sign, it's a communication from you to the people in the room that I don't want to be super serious about this if you don't want to be super serious about this. And one of the memes that's popped up is Meaningful Kills for Huber. He wrote Meaningful Kills in a review, and I don't remember what review specifically it was. And I think he wrote it at Defy Media when we were at Game Trailers, and Blood's the managing editor going through all the reviews, and I'm the editor-in-chief, so the buck stops with us. We let that line slip through. But I definitely had regrets about that later, because Meaningful Kills is kind of gross, and it definitely paints not a great picture of shooting weapons in video games, which to me is just kind of glorified tag. Like it's how in the current climate in video games we represent, I got you. You went somewhere, you didn't see me, I saw you, I got you. Try again, come back 5 minutes later or in the next round, and you'll see if you can sneak up on me next time. Unfortunately, we have to do that with weapons. It'd be great in the future if like we're all shooting rainbows at each other, but that's just kind of like where we're at. And so I don't have a problem with reviewing games that are violent. I don't have a problem having Huber get excited about things like axes and shotguns, but there certainly is a way that we can communicate that to not celebrate it. And that's kind of like the whole embodiment of meaningful kills is like, it's a very gross statement when you think about it, because, obviously, hopefully lives are way more meaningful than kills are. There was tremendous violence last night here in America. So it's not something to be glossed over. It's not something to be made light of. But at the same time, we are analyzing things just in the way that we would analyze an episode of The Sopranos being extremely violent, or a Stephen King novel being extremely disturbing. Just watched half an hour of It the other day, and that's an incredibly disturbing film, but has many, many, many emotional layers to it. And so, no, this is not a non-situation. And certainly, I think it's fine to kind of pick apart our actual words. And we don't hear that a lot, where people take sentences from our reviews and be like, what did you mean by this? Or maybe I think there's a different way that you could have worded that. I actually think that I had a lot of growth in between the reviews of Spider-Man and Red Dead as far as accurately getting my point across. And I've learned a lot of those great lessons from our greatest writers like Bloodworth and Damiani and Ben Moore that really put some fantastic review scripts together. And so I always think we can be better. So it's not a non-situation if it's something we can improve upon. Stan, could you please tell us about how you decided on the name Easy Allies? Obviously, this came from one of Huber's favorite phrases, Uneasy Alliance, but I'm sure everyone is interested to know the details of that naming discussion among the allies, other names that were proposed, and anything that would be interesting to share from that time. Obviously, this has been talked about before on many different instances. Haven't talked about it on A Cup of Jones a lot, so I thought it'd be safe to just give you the super quick version. I was standing right over there. I asked this room, what should we call ourselves? And Ian Hink said, oh, Easy Alliance. And I was like, what? And apparently that was a meeting that I missed. I think all the allies were nervous that like I was not going to be down with meeting, regrouping, and they thought I was going to bail because even when we moved to Defy Media, I was like, I don't know, guys, I might want to. I've been doing this game trailers thing a really long time. I might want to try something else. I might want to move to another outlet. I don't know if it was obvious I was going to be made editor in chief, and I was like, I don't know if I want that job. That sounds really stressful. And so I think when Defy Media let us go, the group was like, we can't count on Jones being on board, and we all know we're on board. And it was like the boss, and it's like it happens, or the boss is over there and all the employees are over in the corner having a conversation without the boss. And so that was a conversation that was had without me, and Easy Alliance was the name for a long, long time. We only went with Easy Allies because that was when we were able to get, Facebook, the URL, Twitter, just across the board, there was just nothing. Easy Allies wasn't a thing. Easy Alliance was definitely a thing in many places. And so, I think it happened simultaneously. I believe Ian told the group and Amanda told me on the very same evening, why don't you try Easy Allies? And the moment somebody actually said it out loud in front of me, I was like, that's it. That's the name. There were no other names. That was it. It was Easy Alliance, and then that switched to Easy Allies. Matt Brookbank. A spoiler is still a spoiler, even if it's from the first 30 minutes of a game, Jones. You did the same thing for God of War, and in this Cup of Jones, you just wrote off someone else's opinion about your Red Dead Redemption 2 review. I didn't watch it because I stopped watching Easy A reviews because of this attitude towards spoilers, unless it's a game I've never heard of. No question, just a comment. Also, will Amanda be available for any of the Box Peak after show Q&As, maybe the final episode? I don't think she has plans to do that. That might change for season 2. It's Kyle's moment, and there's time to do that. There will be a lot of time between Box Peak season 1 and season 2, so there will be time maybe for Amanda to go back and maybe watch all the episodes. That might be a fun stream and talk about her favorite moments, or maybe the two of us can sit down and watch through the whole season. We definitely want to do a heavy amount of promotion for Box Peak in between seasons 1 and season 2. And this is an excellent point. I never want, one of the things that I almost immediately agree with people leaving statements is when As Matt Brookbank says, I wrote off someone else's opinion. I never want to write off someone else's opinion. I feel comfortable disagreeing with opinions. I feel comfortable telling our audience that's a great suggestion, not something that we're going to do, not something that we're going to change. A recent one that just off the top of my head was, are you going to record deliberations of your countdowns? And we're not going to for the foreseeable future. So there are things that I'm comfortable saying no to, but I never want to write off somebody else's opinion. I think maybe the reason I will double down on my statement, though, that and it sounds like I'd be curious, Matt, actually, to dive more into this, because it sounds like you are definitely in the camp that we are loose with our spoilers, maybe compared to others. As far as I often hear different. I often hear, I don't watch, I did watch the GameSpot and IGN reviews of Red Dead Redemption 2 because I was so curious, because I'm just like infatuated with that game. But I didn't watch them for Spider-Man, but I just heard from a lot of people that our reviews, specifically the ones that I edit, because I'm paying way more attention on the reaction of those videos, are much less spoilery than other videos. By your definition, it sounds like anything mentioned from the game is a spoiler. Like, I showed the compendium to show that it existed, and you could see the different categories of the, compendium, and like, that's technically a spoiler. I think the reason why you want to define a spoiler by the actual distance of the time frame of when you're announcing things for a game is when you're posting a video and you want to tell an audience there are no spoilers in it. So by your definition, every one of our reviews have spoilers in them, and if we were going to advertise those reviews, we would label them as spoiler-filled reviews. And I don't think they are in the popular conception of what a spoiler is. To me, a spoiler is something that, having known it existed, detracted from my enjoyment of that game considerably, and was unnecessary to tell me to make me understand that product. I think the first 30 minutes of Red Dead are absolutely necessary in describing that game. I think it has a very deliberate, like I talk about the slow pace of it, and I think that where you start that game, keep in mind, I'm not spoiling it now, just in case anybody, doesn't want that on Cup of Jones and doesn't want, whoa, like, pow, out of nowhere, spoilers. But so while we might disagree on that, that is besides the point. The major point is I don't want to write off people's opinions. So I apologize if I did that. I don't remember who left that comment, or who left that comment on YouTube that said that we spoiled the beginning of Red Dead Redemption. But I will always do that. I think that's really important, especially with a game that is focused on story, for you to understand where you're starting, so that when I explain where you go from there, not listing spoilers, but just kind of talking about generally the emotions I expect you to feel in the story, what you can expect from how big it is and the amount of twists and turns it's going to take. If you don't kind of know where it begins, and then visually, especially with Red Dead, visually how you can see how it expands into the future, then it's hard. It's hard to convey a story. It's hard to communicate that in a review. But props to you, Matt, because I don't watch reviews either. I produce them, but I have never made a purchasing decision on a video game from a review. Don't tell any people that watch our reviews that. But it's just personally not how I can't remember when I bought a video game for $60 and was like, I regret that decision. Like, I'm usually like, yeah, I know this game is good. I know I'm excited. I know I'm going to want to spend time on this. Dragon Quest 11, like, at no point in my playthrough of Dragon Quest 11 was like, I'm upset I spent $60 on this. It was like, no, I knew this was going to be 100 hours. I knew it was going to be fun and colorful and have a weird story and have very synthesized music and so on and so forth. So, but that said, we have definitely spoiled stuff in our reviews before. So it's not like our reviews are immaculate, but I certainly try to not spoil things in my reviews. And I will definitely talk about the beginning of games, stories, whenever a game has a story and I review it. Just Cause 4, beginning of next month. You can expect 2 or 3 sentences about what Rico is up to in Just Cause 4. Straw Hat Ninja. I know you guys are still patiently hunting for a studio, but what do you say to the patrons who are getting restless/angry that you have been at 50,000 for a few months now and still do not have the studio you promised? Personally, it doesn't bother me, and I say take all the time you need, but I understand why some of the patrons are unhappy about it. I carefully try to use the word promise, and hopefully all of you understand that the promise made was that we would look for a studio. Hopefully all of you understand that no one in this entire operation, none of the other 8 allies, or Amanda, maybe Amanda a little bit more, but certainly more than any patron or viewer or follower of Easy Allies wants Easy Allies to move into a studio more than me. I want it so bad, and it's been a difficult process for many reasons. It's been difficult to do with our current jobs and with the other things that we're doing, and to be doing this on the side. But the promise that I attempted to make, and apologies if I erred, is that we are going to search. We are going to take those resources and put them into a studio. And we've been doing that this entire time. We've looked at a lot of different spaces. It has been an interesting process. But I want, based on this comment, I want to talk a little bit about that process specifically. Case in point, this last week. So last week, I got in touch with our real estate agent, and then on Wednesday of last week, we had a big discussion about what space we wanted. That's where we kind of got everything out about his understanding of previous spaces he's gotten for YouTube clients, what we want, more about Easy Allies, basically 3 different categories: what we need, air conditioning, good internet, what we would like, a kitchenette, good parking, and what would be nice, having our own space, not sharing it with anybody. We need 2 rooms specifically. So just like categorizing that so they understand the relevance and obviously how much we're willing to spend and the range, and if we were willing to spend more, what we would want for it. And once that conversation was done, Thursday and Friday last week I was busy, he was busy, and we didn't reconnect until this recent Monday. And then he got back to me on Monday, and we looked ahead at this week, and this week for me has been nonstop. Tuesday was a huge day. Monday was originally going to be the countdown selection day, but like all of the allies got sick. Blood is out because he's moving. There's a lot of other things going on. And Wednesday we were shooting all day. Today I'm doing Cup of Jones and the showcase immediately after that, and I'm shooting a Just Cause preview, and I'm cutting Trailer Jones because we've got to get that done. So Friday was it. Friday was the only day. So we said, okay, if you're free Friday, I'm free Friday. Let's go look at a couple of these spaces. So you take from last Wednesday, me talking to the real estate agent, fast forwarding all the way to the following Friday, and we're finally looking at a space. And hopefully that can give you an idea of why this takes weeks and months, like why, and keep in mind, I could go see that space tomorrow and it could just not work. One of my things that I'm nervous about the space tomorrow is there's 5 rooms, which is amazing. It's like, wow, some of us can maybe have offices, or we could even have one room that's just an editing room that people just go in to produce stuff, or one room that's maybe just a green screen stage, or there's a lot of fun things that we could do with a space like that, if the 2 biggest rooms in the space were actually big enough for our main sets. And I don't know if they are. I'm nervous. I could drive all the way over there, get out of my car, park my car, lock it, walk down the street, walk in, hi, how you doing, meet the real estate agent, go upstairs, oh, this is really interesting, walk into one of those rooms and be like, no, immediately, no, this is too small, we can't do it. And then you can show me the rest of the space, but it doesn't matter. And I've been waiting a full week to even get the opportunity to not pick that studio, potentially. And so that's what's so frustrating about this process, the fact that I cannot force a landowner to give us a space. I can't force a real estate agent to pick things when they are the ones doing the searching for us. I have no experience in being a real estate agent for commercial spaces. I obviously want to bring in professionals and trust their opinions. And so it's just remarkable. And keep in mind, in this entire process, admittedly, that doesn't mean we're our noses to the grindstone in the studio search all the time. There have been weeks that have gone by where nothing happens with the studio search because it's, Halloween week, we're setting up a big group stream, or there's just other big events going on. The week of Red Dead, the week I got that, I got that on Tuesday, put up the review the following Thursday. I wasn't thinking studio nothing that entire time. And so there have been distractions. There have been things that take our attention away from it. But hopefully that gives you a sense that even when it is my absolute #1 focus, I physically can't grab it. It's just out of reach, and it needs to find space in the schedule. And maybe if things, really start dragging on, I'll start pulling myself away from things, maybe delay a Couple Jones episode, or maybe step away from something I was going to review, or I've kind of backed out of Fiasconauts a little bit to focus on other things. And so I want it to happen, but hopefully that helps you understand a little bit how, time can just go zipping by when you're doing this, and it doesn't make me happy. I don't expect it to make you happy. I want that studio. Cola Ina, I love Box Peak, but it also seems to be killing Kyle and keeping him alive at the same time. Is Kyle okay? How do you feel about the whole process of Box Peak? Lessons learned. I have never seen Kyle more confident. I have never seen Kyle more relaxed. I think now that he has season 1 done and is getting the reception that that show is getting, and we can see the possibilities of what we can do with Box Peak in the future, I think it's great. Lessons learned. I mean, obviously, if you watch the Q&As, he has a billion of them. I don't know. I think because we've just during this entire process, we've really tried to get involved and help Kyle with the show, and he's done so much of it by himself. And so I don't know if there's really anything I could have done to like involve us more. I think maybe the recording process. Oh, I think one of the biggest things here, I have a good answer, so we don't take too much time on this question. We should have recorded all of the VO on camera. We should have had footage of everybody in the booth recording their VO. It was just a new process for us to do animation recording in that space using that equipment. Obviously, Amanda's a pro. She just went in and nailed it, like one take wonder the whole time. And but for the rest of us, it was a weird process, and we were so focused on that. And I think Kyle has not done a lot of animation directing, so Kyle, really wanted that to be a behind the scenes thing. But now that we were wrapping up the project, and he was really enjoying putting everybody's voice in there, and we were appreciating everybody's performance, it was like, damn, we should have recorded all of that. I think Ian thought of that too after we had done the musical. He was the Western. He was like, I probably should have had shown everybody singing, in the booth and recording all of that stuff. So, so yeah, there's a definite lesson. BK Singer, I recently finished listening to the Hall of Greats induction. Congrats on a winning nomination. Yay. I know you don't normally post audio from your Twitch streams, but as someone that consumes the majority of EZA content via podcasts and MP3, would posting the audio from special streams like Hall of Greats be possible? Also, I got a few laughs at the backdoor deals being made to secure votes. I do wonder if there's a way to involve the community in Hall of Greats. Accepting nominations from patrons seems like it would be too complicated, but maybe throwing up a poll in which during the stream for a fan vote, winner gets an extra vote, or make it the same as the rest of the allies, and the top 3 gets the appropriate number of votes. I think if we were to include chat in, maybe do a straw poll or something once all of the games were announced and be like, hey, what's the fan pick? I think it'd be interesting to know what our community picks out of the selections made. It may be like down the future if we get a community manager and can really up the involvement in a lot of shows that we do. It might be fun for like maybe one person to make a case for something in Hall of Greats. Whether we vote on that or not, it'd be fun to just have more community involved in that. But we've had that suggestion before to just have a community pick, just to know like out of these games that we brought. But as far as actual voting is concerned, I would want that to be strictly the allies. It is our Hall of Greats, and I wouldn't want to change the rules so far as to add more votes from more people. So when you look at some games, it's kind of like, well, who voted for that? Was that a community vote or was that us? I don't want to blur the lines between, if you look at a game in Hall of Greats, I want you to know how that game got in. That game got in because of votes. We've had some backdoor shady votes in the past. Thankfully that is over. So yeah, I would write that in, but I think we've had that note before. Okay, hold on. Lost my place. Coming back. Megan Leinart, GOTY came to mind the other day, and I personally feel it's one of the most pointless things to ever exist. There is so much hate and negativity when it's so much is brought up. I commented on one of your videos saying that the GOTY discussion is going to be a tough one this year. Then all day I had a sea of people arguing and calling God of War garbage or calling RDR2 overrated. I say to myself, why in the world are people getting so mad about what is essentially a sticker on a box? It's really making me hate this time of year when it should be a celebration of amazing games. How do you feel about GOTY? Do you think it's really that important? And why does it bring out so much animosity within the gaming community? Important is an interesting word to try to assign to GOTY. I don't think GOTYs are important. I think they're important for developers. I think if you tell, Cory Barlog or Brian Intihar or, Sam Dan Houser, like if you give somebody a game of the year, like they're not going to forget that. That's definitely going to be very important for them. And so whether it's important for the industry, I don't know, but it would certainly take me a lot to not do GOTYs. I love doing GOTYs, and I think, as we were talking about before, trying to create a civil environment, trying to create something where we can have a good time talking to each other, we can feel trusted, we can feel safe as far as our, how to express our opinions and to disagree. And I think that's really important. It's something that I think hopefully we are communicating and giving good examples of how to do. We have gotten in debates live. We have gotten in debates on podcasts. We have disagreed, and we've certainly disagreed strongly. We gave Hearthstone Game of the Year back at Game Trailers. I completely stand behind that vote. Everybody hates Hearthstone, but then nobody remembers the other games that came out that year. I think Dark Souls 2 came out that year. I think that was like the big one. They were like, well, you know, Dark Souls 2 is like the worst Souls game, but even that. And I was walking Sophie, and I'm like walking down the street being like, I'm playing Hearthstone and played that game every year. And like, it's easy to get salty about that stuff. It's easy to remember those things. I'm still salty about Last of Us beating GTA 5. But because of how pure that salt is, because it's so all or one, you're parsing 12 months of achievement to just one thing. Obviously, you have multiple GOTYs, you have multiple awards and categories, but it really comes down to GOTY. It really comes down to who wins Best Picture. It really comes down to these big award ceremonies that seems silly, but I think one of the important things about GOTYs is because it is an excellent test of this discourse. To me, there's no greater. Countdowns are fun, but once we get through that, it's fine. But like, it's really fascinating believing what game is more superior to another game, being able to communicate that effectively and respectfully, so you don't start screaming, you don't, degrade the other person's opinion. And whenever I see huge discussions, and I agree, Megan, like, I see discussions like this sometimes on editorials. We get salt like this. We get it on our countdowns. We put that stuff on YouTube. Sometimes we'll express opinions on certain issues that are affecting the gaming industry on our podcasts, and people get frustrated about that stuff. So when you say like, why is everybody so toxic about this stuff? I mean, it's just it's the biggest opinion of the year. Like it's a lot of people have stock in it, and it's conflicting because a lot of people want to promote their GOTYs and want to make a big deal out of it. We definitely just, load up all the epic music whenever we talk about GOTYs every year. I loved cutting his big epic GOTY montages. Ian cuts them now at Easy Allies, but I edited a lot of those back at Game Trailers. And it was fun to work on. It's fun to make a big deal out of. But at the same time, like you said, it's one of the most pointless things to exist. It doesn't really matter. It's not a truth that we've uncovered. The same thing with the review score. It's just one person's opinion. And the remarkableness, the achievement that you get to once a GOTY is determined is just that this is what 9 of us voted on. That's it. That's all it means. That it doesn't mean that Last Guardian is better than all the other games that year. It just means it edged out. It won. It doesn't mean that Last of Us is better than GTA 5. It just means it won. It just means the climate in that room, the climate amongst that group of people, the winds blew in that direction that year. And I think that's fascinating because, like you said, it should be a celebration, and I view it as a celebration. And that's one of the things that I like about other people's GOTYs. I love weird GOTYs. I love outlets that give GOTYs to just weird independent games you've never heard about, or are just not afraid, to completely buck popular vote and just go, vote with their heart and really try to shine a light on other things that I love, like silly GOTYs. I love the whole process, and I'm way more interested in other people's GOTYs than the stuff that we're producing. Obviously, I'm gonna prepare my Red Dead Redemption 2 argument, and I'm gonna come out guns blazing, but it doesn't matter to me who wins, because I just want to have a civil discussion with the allies. I want to learn from them. I want to know what they think. I want to have that debate because I think it makes us sharper in expressing our opinions. I think it is a test of how we can communicate with each other effectively and again respectfully, and how we can do our jobs better. And so I don't want to shy away from that. I don't want to back away from GOTYs. And certainly when there's a lot of frustration and arguing about something, I don't think just doing away with the thing is necessarily the solution. I think the solution is finding a way, being calm, finding a way to communicate what you want to say in a way that'll be effective, and being able to step away from a situation, take a couple deep breaths, and return to it so that you're not letting your emotions speak for you. You can really think before you speak, and be effective. It's all about being effective. It's all about getting your point across. Why yell and not get your point across? Why just make someone angry and then have no one hear you when you can slow down and when would this discussion take place? January? Yes. The first of the year, the first month of the year is always the Easy Allies GOTYs, which is a change from a lot of outlets. And specifically game trailers. G the Finger. I started working in a digital marketing firm. Congratulations. Of only 8 people in an entry-level position. We were then and always have been a family. As the company has grown to over 100 people and I've stepped into a senior director role, I've learned a hard lesson. Running a business requires one to abandon their humanity in certain ways. Nothing as extreme as Gordon Gekko working at Rockstar Games, but needing to fire friends right before the holidays or reconciling people's lives as hours and wages instead of heartbeats and souls. It's a tough shift in mentality, but the end product has allowed us to help our clients and employees a great deal more than if we allowed our sentiments to stay our feet. Have you had to deal with this at Easy Allies, putting friendships aside and put on the business owner hat for the greater good of the organization? Yes, it does happen sometimes, and it is interesting developing that thick skin and being someone that can fire somebody and that can be, or reprimand someone and try, not to be harsh and understand how they could potentially react and just kind of be unflinching about business. Like it was fascinating talking with Viacom people from HR when we made the move from Viacom to Defy Media, and I knew I was being lied at by people both at Defy Media and Viacom. I never got a straight story of like what was going on, and so it was interesting having people. I'll give it to you right now. The business stare, having people across the table from a business meeting, just like. It's like, I don't care. I don't care. Like, I know this might not be prudent. I know you might want to bring lawyers into this, but I don't care. It's not going to affect me. I'm not going to budge. So you're wasting your time if you're just going to keep, blathering on about your side of things. It's just not going to do anything. And like, that is a skill. You think like, oh, how heartless of them, but like it's business. And the people who succeed in business are people that are able to separate that stuff. But it can be chilling at times. And I think one thing that is one of the greatest benefits of this being a Patreon, this being crowdfunded, the way we have set up the business model for this company is, and why things like the studio search and us creating our LLC and a separate checking account take a little more time than they probably should, is we are not business people. We are not real estate people. Like, we are content creators. We are hosts. We are writers. We are reviewers, and we are reactors, if you will, to things. And so our craft, our art, our content always comes first. It's always the main thing that we're working on. When we wake up in the morning, it's the first thing that we do. And a lot of times business takes a back seat, and you've given us the ability to do that. And I think a lot of you kind of understand that. You knew who the 9 employees of Easy Allies were going to be before we started this whole operation. And coming in to invest, it's very clear who are making the decisions and who's working on what. Sometimes it's not clear how many hours are being put in by specific allies, but we're all working at the shows that we're doing. You know what those shows are. So I have not needed to crack the whip, and morale has been remarkably high, and that's something that I am incredibly grateful for. That we're not bringing in brand new people and having to train them and having to acclimate them to a business environment and the other employees. We don't have a lot of arguments that have really blown up to the point where some people's like, I can't work with that person anymore. But I will never forget, and I want to. This might be a slight breach of trust, but I just respect her so much, and she's one of my favorite people in the entire world. And I will just never forget her telling me this, but when Elise Willems left Game Trailers, when she moved over to Funhouse, she told me specifically, like, Jones, you gotta crack the whip. You're too nice. And I was like, I know, and I won't, because I can't. But she just said, I've worked, she said, this is like one of my favorite places, maybe my favorite place I've ever worked. And she said, you're just too nice. You're just too forgiving. You're too patient. You really need to be more aggressive, be less understanding, because it's more effective. And I think realistically, Easy Allies will grow into that phase someday. Probably when we start bringing in other people. If we bring in a social media manager, community manager, maybe another editor, maybe like a new show we want to produce that we're bringing in another showrunner or host to do. That person's going to have to learn about us and about this company, and I can't just immediately be best friends with that person. And so we will get to that point, but thankfully I have faced that before in my career. Haven't faced that so much at Easy Allies, and the 2 major reasons why are because we have 8,000 plus incredible people that support us financially to do just about whatever we want, and I work with 8 really smart people. And really, people that really love this company, really love their jobs, really want it to continue. And so we bicker, we argue, we've had issues, but it's never important enough to endanger any of our business relationships or Easy Allies as a whole. So Fingers crossed. All right. I love these questions. Really good questions today. Morgan Mohala, my question this week has to do with kindness and honesty. I'm curious because you have a very kind disposition. If you would denounce a game prior to its release based on what you have experienced as a gaming insider, I have seen gaming sites being critical of Fallout 76 for its unpolished gameplay and removal of NPCs, some of the best parts of Fallout in my opinion. I got an impression of these complaints from the EZA preview on Fallout 76 as well, but I feel like nobody is seeing these things as red flags other than Ian. I understand the game is still in development, and what the Allies experienced is not the finished product, but it really feels like you are erring on the side of kindness rather than honesty. Please correct me if I'm mistaken. The question is, would you denounce a game prior to release that you sincerely had reservations about, or would you maintain a neutral tone until the finished product is in your hands and let people know that it was bad? An honest but critical stance before release could save members of the community time and money from a bad experience. However, if at launch the game was in good shape and fun to play, an apology or correction would not undo some of the damage done. Yeah, I'm not sure about that. What if the developers assured you that a week 1 patch would fix those issues you were critical of when they sent you the game? When is a game really finished anymore anyways? Lots of questions here. Is there any way to remain neutral and issue a warning about a soon-to-release game that looks to be in bad shape? Sure, I think these are waters that we'll maybe have to wade into given how prevalent early access is now, and things like Fortnite, which is like, has this come out? I don't know, like what's going on? Or things like Dreams that we just hear about again and again and again, or stuff like Final Fantasy VII Remake or Death Stranding, where it's like, this is taking a very long time for development. How, when are we gonna, or Kingdom Hearts 3, like when is this gonna wrap up? But you ask a lot of questions, Morgan, but one of the first things that you say, words you bring up, is honesty. And I think that speaks to the coverage that we've done so far for Fallout 76. Honestly, we haven't played the whole game. Honestly, the ending of Fallout 76 could be amazing. Honestly, they could change a lot before that game comes out. They could have learned a ton from the early preview events and from that beta and make significant changes to that game. There might be a ton of NPCs. They might be screwing with us. We don't know. And so when you have a game, I think the only way that we could really tell you point blank before we review something, skip. We have a show called Don't Skip. We add a new show called Skip, where we just say one episode, like 2 or 3 episodes a year, where we're just like, we're not even going to review this, just completely skip it. I think that is tremendously unfair to avert someone from a purchasing decision or to play something that they otherwise wanted to play and having not experienced the entire thing yourself. I think it's just, it kind of all boils down to that. I know you asked a lot of different questions, but I don't want to take too much time on this, and I think that kind of sums the whole thing up, that we need to experience something before we talk about that experience. And the crazy thing about games is I've just played Just Cause 4, huge open world game. Before I played Red Dead, I only played like an hour and 45 minutes. People were asking a lot of questions. I'm like, I don't know. I didn't do that. I didn't get that far into the game. And so I can only speak about my experience. And actually, when I first started doing previews, man, there was some Xbox first-person shooter. It was the very first preview game trailers ever did. And I can't remember. Pariah? I think it might have been Pariah for the Xbox. And we happened to get an early build, and we happened to get an Xbox debug. And so I was like, wow, we can actually like talk about a video game before it came out. And when I wrote that script, we didn't say anything about our personal opinions. And that was something when we brought on Shane Satterfield that I had to get used to, was this concept of like, I went to a preview event and I didn't like it. It's like, well, you don't know because the game hasn't come out yet. You just have to convey the information that's in the game, and then that's it. And obviously, you can do more and should do more in a preview. You need to, especially in this day and age, you need to communicate your experience. You need to talk about your interest as a person. Here's the games I like. Here's the game I played. Here's the experience I had. And what if the developers assured you that a week one, day one patch would fix those issues? That happens all the time. Is there a way to remain neutral and issue a warning? Yeah. And I think hopefully we've done that with 76. But we're just not going to. I think the next step that you're looking for is us to say definitively, this will be a game. I say experience way too many times. This will be a game that we know you won't enjoy. And it's even hard to say that after you review something and have played it all, because I don't know who's watching this video. I can say, the journey that I was on, and hopefully that will speak to your experience, or you will be able to glean from that what type of playthrough you would have of said game. But if we haven't finished something, and especially something like Fallout 76 that is so weird that even, dozens of hours in, do you really understand it yet? I obviously would want to hear from a lot of people that finished that game and then played it for weeks. To see, with games like Anthem and Destiny, it's like it's all about the end game. It's all about the long-term investment. And so for that game in particular, it's almost impossible to come up with a concrete opinion at this point. Daniel Mogo Sanchez, I forgot the ally who made a comment about spoiler mode, but I agree with him and about how I really enjoyed the format. I think it was Straw Hat Ninja. I had an idea instead of submitting specific questions about, I rarely come up with names like that, about submitting specific talking points. Like, instead of, how do you think Link felt having to time travel in Ocarina versus, don't forget to talk about how messed up the redheads are. In Zelda? Where did the redheads comment come from? I love hearing discussions about things, but it's always a bummer when there's that one subject that gets missed because you get so wrapped up in talking about a thing that you can't remember every single second of it. I think that's fascinating. I think we can explore that in the future with spoiler modes. Obviously, there's been spoiler modes produced since the Cup of Jones where we discussed this, but discussed community involvement and then possibly asking questions or coming up with conversation topics. I think that could potentially improve spoiler mode. I think that is completely up to the host of said spoiler mode, whether they want to do that or not, to maybe post something on Patreon and take questions beforehand, or maybe do that on Twitter. But I don't think that's going to solve the problem of avoiding, that one subject that gets missed because you get so wrapped up in the game. I think that's going to happen every time. Every time a spoiler mode ends, I'm like, oh, we didn't talk about that one thing. And that's kind of the joy of spoiler mode, is you do want to have a structure to it, but it's also fun to just see where the conversation goes and where people feel they have the need to interject, or, I'm going to have a very clear outline for the Red Dead Redemption 2. Get to 100%, everybody. I know you're having a fun time in Chapter 3. Just wrap it up. We're going to record that this week. Looks like we're going to record that next week. And I'm going to have a very clear outline, but I'm not going to be beholden to that. I'm not going to interrupt people. Be like, no, we're talking about this now. I really want that conversation to flow organically. And so inevitably you're going to forget something, but it's a good suggestion. Maverick Summers, do you have any advice, resources for towing the line between respecting opinions that conflict with your own while creating a constructive discourse? Yes. One thing that I try to say, which is why I was upset reading that I dismissed someone's opinion entirely from the comment. I did not mean to do that, because I think conversations, to be respectful, need to be slow. You really need to take your time, think about what you're saying, and I think you need to not sugarcoat, but I think you need to instruct the person you're talking to about where you're coming from. And it's kind of like legal jargon, in conversation. And it's frustrating, and a lot of people would equate it to small talk, but I think it's unfortunately required, because I think as a society, we just have this mindset that we should have evolved past that. And so as language has progressed from the Shakespearean era to now, we used to spend so much more time talking about things, and we would just beat around the bush like nobody's business. And now we get to the point a little bit quicker, but now we're adopting slang so quickly that the younger generations are so expect things to be understood and communicated to them really fast. They expect to just get something right away. And when you say something and you're offended, it's so easy to just go immediately to rage and frustration and retaliation, and instead of taking a step back and realizing, wait a minute, and that doesn't mean that you don't have cause to, just be sure you do. Just really be certain that this is the hill you want to die on, and this is the argument that you want to begin before you get into something. Because I think so many arguments don't need to happen because of, even with my best friends, even with Amanda and people I've known for decades, so we'll say stuff. I'm like, excuse me? And they're like, no, that's not what I meant. I'm sorry. I just meant this. And like, oh, okay. And so that's why I try to set up as many opinions as I dish out here on Cup of Jones. If I'm going to talk about something, I try to say, now keep in mind, this, and this. I understand and am respectful to people who might be frustrated by what I'm about to say. And of course, you can do that on the back end as well. You say something, and then now I can understand how that might be misconstrued. I understand how some people are frustrated about spoilers per se in reviews. I personally don't feel, and that's another thing too, is I think you really want to frame. One of the issues that I see a lot, Twitter is full of this, is I think should be added to every tweet. Every single comment that anybody says should just be like, hey, this is me over in my corner of the world, and here's what's going on. Hi, it's me. That's what everyone is doing. They're just saying from where I'm standing, this is what I see. And we need, like, this Zapruder film, like, we need that perspective. We need to, when something happens, we need to look back and be like, okay, who saw it and what happened? And let's try to communicate this as clearly as possible. And but we need to preface that I'm not saying something that is fact. The same is true if we're talking about review scores or GOTY. We're not saying, like, I'm not saying Red Dead Redemption 2 is the best game of this year, period. I'm saying I think Red Dead Redemption 2 is the best game that I played in 2018 so far. And that's just me. That's just my opinion. It will forever be my opinion. Doesn't matter how many times I say it. Doesn't matter who I say it to. Doesn't matter how I try to defend that opinion. It's still my dumb opinion. And you can feel free to not agree with it, but don't disregard it. Don't throw it away. That's offensive. You're disagreeing with it. Might be frustrating, but it's not offensive. You're entitled to it. What's offensive is if you're not listening to me, if you don't give me the opportunity to talk, and if you don't respect my opinion or my ability to say it. So, just understand that and take your time. In through the nose, out through the mouth. Do that like 10 times or take 5 minutes. Just breathe. Try not to think about anything. Then get back to it. Daniel Garza Andrade. How many hours of a game do you usually capture for review? The first 5 hours, 10 hours, the entire game? We talked about game capture a little bit recently. There's no math to this, Daniel. It changes with some games have different lengths. For Red Dead Redemption 2, I think I broke a record. I had 226 clips that I referenced in the creation of that review, because so many of them were 35 seconds long. So many of them were me just like click clop, uh-oh, whoa, and I'd reach, and you can see there's one clip that made the review of Javier Escuela, no spoilers, Javier Escuela, no major spoilers, excuse me, by the side of the road, and he walks away from me, and that was like an event that popped up. He just popped out and was like, hey, we got to go do something, and I was like grasping for the capture button, and unfortunately didn't get it when I would love to have that moment, but I was just riding to a town. I didn't know something was going to happen. Whereas Soul Calibur 6, I think Ben turned in 26 clips for that review, which Dawn is cutting, which will go up very soon, and which I was almost going to cut and then just had too much on my plate this week. But that's really simple because you just want to make sure you have at least one big fight from each character represented. You want to go into each mode, play it once to get footage of that, maybe one couple pickups at the end of it once you're done with capturing. If you're like, we don't really represent this one mode or this one gameplay element that I talk about, let me get one quick shot of that, and then we're done. Then you have Assassin's Creed Odyssey, which has like 160 clips, because there's just so much going on. So depends on the size of the game, depends on how far we want to get in to actually represent what we're talking about. For something like Walking Dead, the final season from Telltale, we would have to be very cautious of spoilers, and so we would probably capture the entire thing because you have no idea what's going to happen, but would be very selective in actually what we show for the review. So there's no equation that works for the whole thing. Terrence Karen, on the topic of Red Dead Redemption 2, I think your review could have spoken a bit more about the fact that it's not a game for everyone, even more than most AAA games. I think it's going to be a divisive game at the end of the year. I'm floating between great moments and moments of boredom after 30 hours into it. I hear you. That's a tough thing for one person to say. I think that's easy for you to know as a fact, because when you were introduced to Red Dead, from what I know, I'm guessing you played that game at launch, all the opinions were already out. So you see all the reviews, you read all the reviews, and then you get like 10 hours in the game, you're talking immediately with your friends about it. And so you know for a fact, you're seeing the writing on the wall that this is a divisive game, that a lot of people aren't into it. I was extremely into it. I started that game. It was slow as molasses, and I was just drinking the molasses up. I loved it. And I think the slow pace and the things that don't necessarily work for everybody are part of what make that game incredible. But I think every game is not necessarily for everybody. I think that would kind of be a redundant statement to bring up in every single review, to be like, now some people might not like this. But I think it is an important sentiment to inform how you're going to communicate a review, what kind of language specifically you're going to pick, because it's important to, if you can, label people that would like this game. And so I do mention in the game that if you have played Red Dead Redemption, all the better. If you haven't, you're fine. You can just jump right into this. I see a lot of people that saying that they're going to play Red Dead Redemption 2 and then go back to 1. I think that'll be rough. I think going back a gen and having that engine not being able to pump out the incredible visuals from Red Dead Redemption 2 and some of the gameplay stuff that's not going to be available anymore, I think could be rough. Your attachment to the horse, all the different weapons. But And that's not to say that I don't have regrets about reviews. I always have regrets about stuff that I would bring up. I talk really briefly about how spontaneous the events are in Red Dead Redemption 2 and how many of them there are. I think I could have gone a little bit more on that because of how much is going on. And especially your 30 hours, I'm like 80 to 100 hours into Red Dead Redemption 2, and stuff is still happening. I am still being introduced to people. I'm still surprised by stuff happening. I'm still seeing animals I've never seen before, ever, during that entire time. It's pretty incredible how much that stuff trickles out. But again, at 60 hours, I was not able to communicate that. So I don't think I've ever produced a review that I haven't looked back and thought, I probably should have mentioned something. But what you're realizing, might have been the benefit of having been able to talk to people about it. I'm breathing such a sigh of relief now because people are coming up to me and they're like, oh, hey, I had this opinion about Red Dead. And it's like, oh, tell me your opinion about Red Dead, please. I can't talk to anybody about it. I had Huber finally beat it. I just grabbed him and pulled him away into a quiet corner and was like, we have to have an hour and a half conversation because there's so much that I need to go over. But I appreciate that. I appreciate that sentiment. And I agree. If you haven't started Red Dead, it is divisive, and I'm surprised actually by a lot of people that are frustrated with it. Gary Whitta and Marcus Beard, the Annoyed Gamer, we're not having fun with that game, and that's unfortunate. Rammer, have you ever thought about hosting some sort of Easy Allies New Year's special, a la Dick Clark? Just something I was thinking about as the holidays grow near, because you have the voice and personality to pull it off. Thank you, Rammer. Possibly, Rammer has some great, later today, check out twitch.tv/Easy Allies, 1 p.m. Pacific time. Rammer has some awesome contributions to the community showcase. Possibly in the far-off future, once you settle into your studio, it could be full of vocal performances by Ian, awesome guest interviews, and it would be the end of the New Year's countdown by yours truly. I don't think any other channel is doing this sort of content, and it may help separate and grow your brand in a different way than your other visual ventures. I totally understand if you're put off by this idea because maybe you would rather rest on New Year's, but maybe one year you might find the energy and excitement to pull it off. Just an idea that I wanted to put out there, and I know it may never happen, but it was fun just thinking about the possibilities, and perhaps something you might want to share with the other allies. That would be fun. It'll never happen because just of the way the industry is set up and all of the work that we do, the work that we have to do beforehand to even take a week off or maybe 2 weeks off during the holidays to get shows ready, to get content available so that our channel just does suddenly disappear for half a month. But that's vacation time, baby. We're gone. All the allies are gone when that happens. I could maybe do a one-man show because a lot of times I'll stay in town during New Year's, but that's just it's not an amount of I mean, it is rest, but it's not only getting away from work, it's kind of getting away from each other. It's just nice to be like, bye. Well, let's all get on a plane and just get out of Dodge, and then we'll meet and figure out what 2019 is going to be when we get back. Camille Glowacki. Do you see a dynamic shift in the time content streams are produced once a studio is in the picture? How would you expect more of a regular business hours? Would you expect more of a regular business hour stream schedule, or would the space be used more as a creation space rather than your typical office? Both, which is safe and frustrating to hear, but. This industry is so wacky with its time frames that if there's anything 2+ years of producing stuff at Easy Allies has taught me, is that we can't commit. There's some shows that we do every single day, like the podcast, we always shoot the same time, except for the Halloween stream. We swapped the shooting schedule, which was fun. If you watch that podcast that we shot at Halloween, there's sunlight coming in through the side of the door, which never happens because we always shoot the podcast at night. It's like cutting across Kyle's head for half of the podcast. So I don't think that we'll have more of a hardcore streaming schedule that we'll be able to stick to all the time. I used to stream a lot on Thursday nights. That was Thursday nights at 10 p.m. Pacific time was my stream time. I've been very busy with other things and streaming stuff. I used to do full playthroughs of stuff, regular concurrent episodes, and have not done that in a while. And so it's hard to commit to a regular schedule for something like streaming. We just try to show up and do as much of it as we can. And but at the same time, I could very much see new shows being added to our streaming schedule and those being on a specific stream schedule. So if you look at the streams that we already do, they're not going to become streamlined in a way that they are not here, at Garage HQ. But I would not be surprised if we're able to add 1 or 2 more things onto there. Case in point, Full Playthrough Fridays that we would do once a month on a Friday. And so that's something we would be able to commit to. You would know when it happens, and hopefully it looks and sounds a lot better. Chris Irely, is there a Spyro Reignited Trilogy review one of the allies is doing, or no? I think we are. I think Damiani might be doing that. I didn't see it on your website for the upcoming schedule. I wasn't sure if that means you're not doing it, doing a review for it. If you guys are, then woohoo! If not, no. If not, no why. Spyro was one of my favorite games growing up, and since I know pretty much none of the allies never played those games, was hoping to see a review about the remasters. I think Kyle played them. I know Brad or Hubert definitely played them. So yeah, that is. Oh, there's Camille's in the comments, I believe. Yeah, we have a comment later on about Daracene, and I think we have a review coming up for that. Maybe Blood can correct me. It's tough because sometimes we plan to do a review. I'm in a sticky situation because like I take these questions late on Wednesday night, and so a lot of this is me just like, here's what I think is going on with that. But so when I check our release schedule, I know these games are assigned to people, but I don't know if they're actually going to have time. And sometimes you play a game and you're in the middle of a game and it's like, I don't think I'm going to have time to review this. I don't think that this is something that is worth me focusing on right now, given my schedule. But I believe, yeah, we're going to have a review of Spyro Reignited and possibly Daracene. Mikhail Hervel-Nemo, I don't think you're promoting the Patreon like you used to. Before we hit the studio goal, it would be common to hear, go help us on Patreon. We're so close to hitting that studio goal. Now that you've hit the studio goal, we rarely hear about the next goal, Full Playthrough Fridays. I think it's a great stretch goal to have, and I think it's something people want, but I think it's important to advertise the goal more than you currently are. I think part of what drove you past 50K is that we often heard we're so close at the end of the podcast or stream or whatever. Sorry if this comment is overly nitpicky, or if it's just wrong with what I'm saying, but watching some older episodes, I got this impression. Nope, 100%. You are not wrong. But like I said before, I don't want to overshadow or get kind of monotone in our requests for money, given that not only is that dialogue going to change once we get the studio, because we're going to have a lot of money to produce stuff for that studio space, but obviously more, support is encouraged. So we're going to want to reiterate what those goals are once we move into the space. We're talking about producing a temp episode of Huber's Game Show to give you an idea of what that is. It might be fun once we get into the studio to just do a Full Playthrough Friday, just for fun, do a freebie, and then have that stand as like, here's what that is. Not that you don't know what that is or you can't comprehend what it's like for us to sit down and full play through a game, but just to re-educate people that is a tier and something that we haven't hit yet and something that we can commit to once a month moving forward. Also, we have plans to do other fundraising stuff soon. We have one specifically for the end of the year that we want to do that we've been talking about for a while. Has nothing to do with the studio. It is completely separate, and it'll be fun. And so, again, I just don't want to exhaust people with that idea. On one hand, it's our fiduciary duty to keep people inspired and focused on our Patreon and encouraged to either pledge or up their available pledge. But at the same time, I don't want people to be burnt out on just like, man, they just keep talking again and again about how desperate they are. We're not desperate. We have goals. We're passionate about those goals, but we're in great shape right now, and it's all because of you. So I think our fans deserve a little bit of break from that dialogue, because trust me, the help us reach X goal or help us attain this new thing we want to do, it's coming. Sergey P. Spider-Man pin wasn't from Sony, it was from me. Hold on. I totally screwed up, and I remember this comment, and I just got sidetracked, and I think I got sidetracked because we only had one gift that night, and so I just opened it really quickly. Like, we didn't make a big hullabaloo about stuff, but like, this gorgeous Spider-Man pen, so you can see Spider-Man. He's like, it's the Spider-Man from the cover. Basically, it's like him directly off the box art. So we I opened this one, and then it had a note saying like, congratulations, you platinum Spider-Man, and I was like, oh, weird. I guess they like mailed this to us. Strange. But it was not. It was from Sergey. As mentioned on Cup of Jones a couple weeks ago, at least the status on the website says shipped. Anyway, may I ask if anyone is reviewing Overkill's The Walking Dead game? I don't believe we are. We might stream it. I was actually surprised they already released it. It seems like the game is so under the radar right now. I played it at E3. It was okay. It was like a really slow Left 4 Dead, which is attractive to me because I love slow zombies. Like, I wish more games did the kind of slow, shambling hordes, because there are ways to make that scary. I was kind of bummed when I played the Far Cry expansion that with zombies, when they were all fast running, glowing like neon zombies. Like, But I don't think we are planning to do that, and I apologize for not mentioning you sending this lovely pin. I love pins. He is so pretty. It's funny. It kind of looks like he has an upside down paperclip in his hand, or like a cane. Like, obviously it's the webbing. Obviously the webbing keeps going from there, but Thank you so much, Sergey. Sorry I didn't give you the respect that you deserved. Hopefully I remember that at the next group stream. Elliot Moscow. This is going to be an "Are you?" question with From Software being beloved by the majority of the allies and your wish to review more VR titles. Can we expect a Daracene review? Yeah, Brad Ellis and Ian were both given codes for that, I believe. We will see. And one of the other things with reviews that I feel bad is if I say, I think this person's reviewing it, I know they're playing it, and then we don't review, I don't want you then to go to them and be like, Brandon said you were going to review it, what happened? Like, it's completely on them what they want to do. I have been given codes before and been like, I don't have time to review this. Or I think I might review it, and then the time comes up and I'm like, I don't have time. Or I start playing something and it's like, yeah, this is way too involved right now. I'll stream it or I'll talk about it on Frame Trap, but I won't have time to actually review it or do a Don't Skip. I need to do a Don't Skip. I've never written an episode of that show, and that sucks. Miguel Menj. I've just never thought of anything. Yeah. I just don't have any ideas for Don't Skips personally. I think it's a very personal show, and I just kind of want to be inspired to think about an episode. Nothing's come. Miguel Menjivar, last week you were talking about not having any ideas for your own creative show. However, when you talked about dreams and what you would like to do with it, it made me think. What if you created a short show, maybe 4 or 5 episodes, where you go through some of the worlds created in that game and then give a quick review of it? It's not like you will do one of the great Easy A reviews, but something more simple, like if you liked it or not. In that way, people are still watching, will also go and search for that world and play it. Of course, we still don't know when Dreams will be released, but it's just an idea. Miguel, I plan to stream Dreams a lot. I don't know if I'll be able to commit to like once a week. I don't know how much Red Dead Online I'll be playing whenever Dreams comes out, but I definitely want to be very involved, so I will most likely be doing something like that. Gabriel Heilborn, the year is almost over and we are closer to the GOTY season. The Game Trailers GOTY was my favorite and I always looked forward to it, but the Easy A GOTY is a tricky one with hours of footage and lengthy discussions. Would it be feasible to do a short video listing the categories for GOTY, the games contesting, and the winner, and maybe a short comment of why that particular game won? Something like 15 to 20 minutes. No video capture required, low production. That would make it easier for me and probably other allies to experience the Easy A GOTYs. I know we're only supposed to ask only one question, but when can we expect a date for the Easy A in concert for 2019? Very soon. We're looking to lock that down in the next week or two and give you more details about our March meetup for our 3rd anniversary, starting year 3 of Easy Allies, beginning in late March of 2019. I think we do this. Or something like this. Would do a short video listing the categories for GOTY, the games contesting, and the winner, and maybe a short comment of why that particular game won. We do produce a video. You can go back and see a video that's not the entire video. It's just winners. I don't think we do a written description. I think it's literally just the info. It's just like the games and lower thirds, just to give you an update of like what won and what went down. Maybe we can produce that more this year. That is strictly how we did GOTYs back at Game Trailers, and I know a lot of people miss that. It's not how we do GOTYs here because people wanted the deliberations. They wanted to see that aspect, and so preparing for deliberations, streaming all of that, posting that archive on YouTube, then turning that around and producing a video is a lot of work. And then, but on top of that, writing a script independently after we've already discussed things so much, and then me voicing that and then cutting that video, it's just something we just haven't put the time into. But that doesn't mean it wouldn't be great. That doesn't mean it wouldn't recapture a lot of the joy that you had back at Game Trailers when we watched those videos. They were definitely more highly produced and more epically presented. Mark Dalga, were any non-horror games considered for the top 10 scariest games? While I expected the list to be mostly horror titles, I'm curious if anyone brought non-horror titles with strong horror elements or atmospheres. Like you, I have a strong fear of deep, dark water, making Subnautica one of the most terrifying gaming experiences I've ever had. Yeah, I've been putting that game off. I should probably play Subnautica. Did that come out for PS4? That's just PC, right? I also was very unnerved throughout my playthrough of the original BioShock. We talked about BioShock. I'm curious if any of the allies brought similar games to the discussion. Selfish second question, can you wish my cat Garfield a happy birthday today? He's turning 4. Happy birthday, Garfield. Let's all wish Garfield a happy birthday. If none of you knew this, big Garfield fan when I was a kid. Loved Garfield. It's one of my favorite comics. Garfield and Calvin and Hobbes were top tier. That was my absolute favorite comic strips to read. And yeah, cheers, Garfield. Yeah, I hear you. I think it's not that these games aren't unnerving. Even something like Gone Home is super creepy. Gone Home is a scary game. You're like, The first time I played Gone Home, I was just like, man, this is a game building up to just one dynamite jump scare, isn't it? You know, like just constantly opening up doors and going to creepy rooms and going downstairs and into the attic. And so, yeah, I think there's creep in a lot of these games. I think there's dread. I think there's a building fear. There's unease. But when you talk about scares, when you talk about really your heart is beating, you jump out of your chair, you really cross that line into feeling like you yourself are going to be harmed when obviously you are not. I didn't really get that from Subnautica. Didn't really get that from BioShock. Got it in moments. I think it's something you can attribute to those games, and I think those games deserve to be talked about when you pick your top 10 games. But looking back at those 10 games, it's like I can't, I can't think of something on the periphery that scared me as much as those games. And that's feedback for business. There we go. Time to move on to personal questions, which we have a considerable amount, and we're going to do a brief little. Wow, I think we have more personal questions. We have some really, really dense personal questions. And I totally missed where those are. There we go. Let's take a wee little break. See, I can take long breaks like this. I don't have to worry about the people who wrote those jazz tunes breathing down my neck. Feedback. Personal. Professor Metal Gear. I have not progressed too far into Red Dead Redemption 2. No spoilers here. And I did not play the first Red Dead Redemption, but after playing through the first chapter, there's something eerily familiar with Dutch's voice, tone, style of talking. I could not pinpoint it at first, but after some more dialogue from Dutch, I realized that his voice actor, Benjamin Byron Davis, was a dead ringer for the voice and tone of actor Slim Pickens of Dr. Strangelove and Blazing Saddles fame. It had me reminiscing of other various Western Old West movies, and I wanted to ask, what is your favorite Western-style movie from any genre, comedy, spaghetti, drama, etc., and which actor is your favorite in a Western role? It would probably be Westerns. Actually, are this the next episode of Reaction Shots, and man, the last like 3 or 4 episodes of Reaction Shots, I'll help them set up, and then I'm like really happy not to be on a show. It's like I can go do something or take a nap or work on something else. But they've been so tough to not talk about stuff. They did heists, and they didn't talk about Sneakers, which is one of my favorite heist movies ever. They just talk about Westerns, and I'm like, ugh. I want to talk about Westerns. I like Westerns. Tombstone is my favorite Western. I love Tombstone, and therefore Val Kilmer is my favorite role of anybody in any Western. Silverado is also a very fun Western. Great cast. Kevin Kline, Jeff Goldblum, Danny Glover, a very, very, very young Kevin Costner, Scott Glenn, just a lot of Brian Dennehy, just a lot of great, great performances in Silverado. And Back to the Future Part 3 is a favorite, and obviously anything Clint Eastwood's ever produced. I took my sweet time seeing Unforgiven. I didn't see Unforgiven until maybe like a couple years ago, and some good stuff. Gene Hackman's really good in that movie. What's that Russell Crowe, Gene Hackman, Sharon Stone Western that's like really silly? I can't remember. Maybe Chad can tell me. I don't like it. I just for some reason thought of it because Hackman's also in that. Oh, Maverick. Oh, my God, Maverick. Yeah, Maverick. Maverick is also a gem. Maverick is so great. Still love Tombstone more. You tell him I'm coming, and hell's coming with me. Kurt Russell. Oh, chills. Also, Bill Paxton. Tip hat to Bill Paxton and the one of the triumphant returns of the brotherhood that is Bill Paxton and Michael Biehn. I believe the 4th total film that the two of them were in together. Aliens versus Cowboys, no. Wild Wild West, no. All The Quick and the Dead, thank you. That's incorrect, no. Wild Wild West, no. Please explain why Carl Williams, please explain why Cloud Atlas is a terrible movie. If you're not caught up, I stated that on the podcast, and chat let me have it, of course. I think if you say anything's a bad movie, somebody in chat, not that their opinions are invalid, nor are mine, but whenever I say something like that, I'm like, yeah, somebody's going to come out and... I just made somebody angry. I'm watching the latest podcast, and you brought up that you saw the movie and said it was terrible. Immediately, my face scrunched up in light disgust. Cloud Atlas was amazing and easily the best things the Wachowskis have done since The Matrix. I haven't watched Sense8. I didn't know the Wachowskis did Sense8. Good to know. And that's the true. but still, I would love to hear your dissenting opinion on the film. Okay. I think the beginning of Cloud Atlas is really great. I think there are moments in Cloud Atlas that are magical. There's a lot of time manipulation in Cloud Atlas. Cloud Atlas is a lot about generation gaps. It's a lot about how narratives continue through time, how storytelling passes through time. I am infatuated with the art of storytelling, so I love the concept. I think one of the reasons I didn't like Cloud Atlas is my expectations might have been way too high. The trailer for Cloud Atlas blew me away. I was like, whoa, this movie looks amazing. And I think they used music from the movie. And so I heard this like new track I'd never heard before, and all these crazy actors, and were sci-fi and you know, way like crazy future apocalyptic sci-fi and Hugo Weaving, and there's just so many things about this that I love. I really love not the guy from Across the Universe and 21, that weird Kevin Spacey gambling movie, but the guy Benjamin something, the guy who plays Q now in the Bond movies. He's really great. I think Jim Broadbent is in a lot of scenes with him, and he's awesome. And there's really great stuff. And part of why I get frustrated with movies a lot of the time is because I can see the ingredients for a tasty gumbo, but it was just not enough or too much time in the oven. I don't know. I will also say that I forgot most of this film. So I will talk about 3 things that just really frustrated me. I've talked specifically about the boat and the ship. You didn't comment on that, and I'm curious to hear your take on that. The one character shows up in a gigantic ship that's like just glides on water. So imagine like a big cruise ship with a hole in the middle of it that just like like traveling across the world takes no effort. Here I come in my boat, and everything is easy. And then has to like hike up a mountain. And I'm like, why? You didn't have like a plane or a ship or teleporter or parachute or something to get to this mountain? And they didn't say why. Like she wasn't like, the weather's real bad, or I'm getting interference from something. Maybe she did. I missed it. I just thought that was really silly. If you've seen Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome, the kids in Mad Max talked about the before time and the long, long ago. They have this like broken future English where no one is around to tell them they said something wrong, and so they just start developing their own dialect. And there's a scene with future Halle Berry and future Tom Hanks where they talk like this continually, where I think Halle Berry's more educated, and so she has a different way of speaking, and she's trying to speak to Tom Hanks and he's trying to speak to her. And man, this is tough. It's like doing drama in a horror film. You have to have good actors, and these are really good actors. But to me, that was such a fine line. Probably one of my biggest issues with Cloud Atlas. There's a lot of fine lines, a lot of really tenuous threads that just get, you know, frayed and ultimately come apart for me. And one of these was the implementation of this language. I just started laughing at some point. I was just like, I just can't take this seriously. I'm sure this would exist. I'm sure a lot of work was put into this. I'm sure this might be a realistic interpretation of what the human language will be like in 200 years. But Tom Hanks just sounds silly right now. It just was silly. It's like, you know, that guy on that talk show that does the crying when he cries. He goes, meow. Have you ever seen that? Like the guy, he's like, I think his son tells him he loves him, or his son like says, you've made mistakes in the past, but I still love you. And the guy's like, meow. And it's this incredibly emotional moment for this guy. Like, this is, you know, it's the thing about reality TV is you don't really get the chance to really understand like what these people are going through, that you're just watching through a magnifying glass. And incredibly emotional moment, but it's hilarious. Like, yeah, LOL. Like, it's hilarious that you go back and watch it, and it's funny. People have remixed it, and it like just taken at face value, it's funny. But obviously, there's deep emotion underneath it, producing this event. And that's kind of this thing with Cloud Atlas, where it's like, I can see the framework of a dramatic tale, but I can't stop giggling. And maybe I'm immature. I'm sorry. It was very distracting and really took me out of it. The makeup artist in Cloud Atlas went out of control. So they have this thing in Cloud Atlas where, and maybe this is just one of my faults as a film major, I'm not patting myself on the back and saying I'm like super smart and I know everything about film, but they do a thing in Cloud Atlas where they try to like hide actors, where like you'll go into the past or in the future and they'll like swap like genders, where like Halle Berry's a man now, or like Hugo Weaving's Chinese now, or they'll do something where, you know, they'll be like, I bet you didn't know he was in that scene. And it's like, no, I know. It's, yep, that's Tom Hanks. Yep. You know, like, that's really Tom Hanks right there. Like, it's and the movie's very cheeky about it, and that just got really distracting. And like, I was just like looking at the makeup and the hair pieces and the seams, and it was. Makeup's rough. We talked about this. I don't know if we talked about it on the podcast or on A Cup of Jones recently, but like, I hate movies that are just like, and they're old. And you're like, don't do that. And it's like, Hill House did that in one episode. They're just like, and old people. And you're like, hire other actors if you're just going to throw that in there, but don't suddenly have somebody be like, hi, I'm a character. And it's like, no, this is so silly. So it's just, it got silly. Cloud Atlas to me was a silly film, and I went in really wanting to like it. I didn't see it in the theaters. I saw it in the comfort of my home with Amanda. We were like, let's do this, and it ended, and we were like, what was that? So, Carl, I wish I did talk a lot about it, but I wish I could give you, as a reviewer, I wish I could treat that movie better, and I wish I could give you a more... I wish I could have written something down right when I saw it to better encapsulate my opinions about it, because it has been a long time, and because it didn't affect me as much as I wanted it to, I don't remember a lot of details. So that's what I do remember. Eduardo Ortiz with a very confusing comment. Did Poe Dameron mention setting his blaster to stun or something before he senselessly and pointlessly murdered his crewmates and probably friends, all in an attempt to overthrow command and play the hero? If he didn't, why go through all that effort to cover up that Han shot first when Poe is a sociopathic killer? I don't know if Poe's a sociopathic killer. I think you might be going a little bit too far. It's war. People have to make hard decisions in war. I think I think when you have the term sociopathic killer, that doesn't really apply to a soldier on the battlefield a lot of the time. I think there are clear lines that you can draw from there. He stunned. Yeah, no, I don't think he stunned all those people. I think he means, and these are not episode 8 spoilers. This is the beginning of the movie. Well, we've already established that, haven't we? That even if you talk about the first 5 minutes of a film, you know, if you talk about anything involved in the movie. So okay, first 10-minute spoilers for Star Wars Episode 8 incoming. But yeah, he just kind of does what he wants in the beginning there, and lives are lost. But I have a question. I was confused by something. I don't know if you know this, but I was not thrilled about Episode 8. I had a lot of issues with it. And I have a new issue, something that very much confuses me. And this is in the beginning of Episode 8, they're going to fight a dreadnought. And Poe Dameron is in his X-Wing, and he's like, all right, here we go. I'm gonna go fight this dreadnought. Let's do it. And Carrie Fisher, Princess Leia, gets on the microphone and says, no, Poe, let's not fight that dreadnought. Turn around, come back to base. And he's like, no, we're going to do it. And she's like, grr, you're not listening to my orders. Then it cuts to a whole fleet of bombers and A-Wings that are also going to go bomb the dreadnought. And were they not listening to Leia? Like, because you don't hear Poe tell the bombers, don't listen to Leia, let's do it anyway. Like, did they make the decision? Did they all uniformly be like, yeah, screw you, Leia, let's bomb the dreadnought? Like, what happened there? You don't really see that chain of command represented in Episode 8. It's so confusing. And then everyone's like mad at Poe. We're just like, how dare you, Poe? And it's like, the bombers made the same call. The A-Wing pilots made the same call. They were all way down with destroying that dreadnought. It's like, what happened there? Was Leia not able to like tell them? Like, was she not able to patch into the bombers and be like, don't turn around, let's get out of here? You know, like, was Poe really like in charge of that whole operation? It's weird. Like, the chain of command is extremely confusing in Episode 8. So I know there's like a lot of issues that people have with Episode 8. There's one that right away. There's one like at the beginning of the movie. And the lady would get sucked out when the bay doors open to drop the bombs. But anyway, Samuel Rosman, from one Disney fan to another, what are your personal highlights and where would you like to go next? Assuming you haven't been to all 6 parks already. Also, what are your hype levels to the unannounced or rumored addition to all of Disney parks? Samo, it is hard for me to get excited about something happening to a park far away from where I live. I must sympathize with people that hear me talk about Disneyland a lot and like live in Minnesota and are like, I don't have a travel budget, Jones. Thanks a lot for telling me how great Disneyland is. It means a lot to me. You know, it's a lot I can do with that information. But I am excited to check out Avatar World. And they made some Toy Story additions to Hollywood Studios or something. That sounds like fun. But specifically, the Avatar rides sound really crazy. And it's the kind of thing where I've seen video on YouTube and people have described it to me, and I'm like, I got to see that. What are my personal highlights from just Disney fans? I guess from the park. I I mean, all sorts of crazy highlights. I've so many stories over the years that I've heard at Disneyland. Haunted Mansion is my favorite ride. And I would love to go to Shanghai. If I could just step through a portal right now, right in the middle of I wouldn't even stop this live stream. I would just walk through that portal and go straight to Shanghai and check out that crazy Pirates land that they built there. And we're getting, obviously, Star Wars Land. I'm excited. I'm excited to see what's built in Star Wars Land. I'm not excited for Star Wars Land because it is going to be a nightmare. The ticket prices are going to go up. It's going to be insanely crowded. Hopefully, the takes away from other parts of the ride or other parts of California Adventure in the main park. But I'm excited about that. And I'm excited about the Spider-Man and Avengers ride that are coming to California Adventure. But we're a year or two away from that. Christopher Peterson, what is the best Christmas gift you've ever received? A Nintendo 64. What's the best you've given? I used to do characters at Christmas. I used to come out and we would open presents and then I'd be like, wait, I got to go to the bathroom. And then I would go to the bathroom, put on a costume, go out the side door, walk up to the front door, knock on the door, and then I would come in as an elf. And I would create different personas for these different elves. I think I did this 3 separate times, and my parents loved it. It was like it was better than any present I could have given them. They just lost their minds. I wrote little poems and I handed out the presents, and more work than I've ever done. Taco is surprised that there is a Spider-Man ride. Taco, there is a ride at Islands of Adventure in Florida that's a Spider-Man ride that is still one of the best rides I have ever been on. It is so great. So there already is a Spider-Man ride, but there is an Avengers ride and a Spider-Man ride coming to California Adventure. I believe. I know there's an Avengers ride. The Spider-Man ride might be a rumor, but they have posters of Spider-Man and it says recruiting 2020. So whatever that means. Jeffrey White, what do you think of the state of Star Wars video games at this point in time? As a fan of single player stories, I'm disappointed that we've only had a Lego Star Wars game and 2 Battlefronts on console during this generation, at least for Star Wars games. I wish we could have had more single player RPGs and action adventure Star Wars titles, so the lack of Star Wars game releases really worries me. You've played Galaxy of Heroes, I haven't, so I'm wondering what your take is on all of this with your expanded understanding of EA's Star Wars titles. I don't feel good at all. It's in a really bad place. I should have played more Battlefront. It's tough for me to play absolutely every single game, even though I dearly love Star Wars in that world, and I really enjoyed the first Battlefront. I am frustrated for sure, and especially when we're like getting near the end of a generation and you look back at the gen and it's like, yeah, that was it. We got a Lego game, and which I think was kind of silly, that like we got a Lego game of episodes 4, 5, 6, and then we got a Lego game of episodes 1, 2, 3, and then they did a Lego game of 7. And I hear it's really good actually, but at the same time, like, you know, when you get a Lego game just from one film, it's like Lego Incredibles. You're like, all right. I have doubts of how you can compare that one game to this other game that did 3. I'm sorry, that one game based on a movie that this other game that did 3 movies. But yeah, no, there's no question, given that if this was like the 90s, I would totally understand if there were not a lot of Star Wars games. But like Star Wars is on fire right now. We have a brand new animated show called Resistance that I haven't checked out. Clone Wars is coming back. Episode 9 is coming up. We had just had Solo. Like, there is so much going on in the Star Wars world, and it's hilarious. It's not like, well, they gave Star Wars to that, publisher that's doesn't have a lot of money and there's not a lot that they can do. I think they put way too many eggs in the Battlefront basket, and it was they have fumbled that Star Wars license. There is no question, and it's frustrating and just weird that we don't even know like the concept for the Respawn game. Like, there's just so much like, I don't know what to do with Star Wars. And it's like, how do you not know what to do with Star Wars? How do you not have a billion ideas? How did we not get 1313 and another Star Wars game? How did 2 Star Wars games not happen? Like, it's just crazy to me that you can get that far in development of something Star Wars related and you're like, nah. Especially with the single player where they're just like, we weren't sure people were going to buy this. Like, come on. Taco, Official Jones, and Troop available. Thoughts on Treasure Planet? I get Treasure Planet and Atlantis mixed up. I also get Treasure Planet and Titan AE mixed up, which is blasphemy, I know. I need to see Treasure Planet again. That's my take. That's my thought. Troop is not available. I love a lot of people were like, Troop can answer this too if she wants. Troop isn't on every episode of Cup of Jones. She's not invited to every episode of Cup of Jones. You just get me today, all right? She's probably listening to that. Karsim Mahmood, I got engaged a couple months back. Yay! And I'm going to get married in August 2019. Woohoo! Woo! After watching you and Amanda last week and seeing as you're coming up to your anniversary, I was wondering if the two of you have any tips. We haven't lived together, and I don't plan to until after the wedding, so it'll be a big change. Yeah, it will. That was the biggest change in our relationship. Moving in with Amanda compared to marrying Amanda was night and day. Moving in was the moment. That was the big scary thing, and I could feel like my whole life changing and shifting into this new life. And then I've had that new life ever since, and it's great. But it was terrifying at the same time. Amanda's like, yeah, we got a new apartment. I'm going to sleep there tonight. And I was like, I'll be there next week. And Amanda's like, no, you will be there tonight. You were moving in. I'm just going to sleep in a bed and you're sleeping in it too. So it'll be a big change. Any advice would be generally appreciated. And secondly, on a much lighter note, I'm going to answer this one first. Have you seen Batman Ninja? What did you think of it? It's on Netflix right now if you haven't checked it out yet. I thought it was a fun and pretty silly love letter to Batman from the perspective of a Japanese audience, but I was hoping it would be more serious than it ended up being. It was still a good watch, though, just absolutely bonkers. By the way, my name is pronounced Carsim. I will try to remember that. Spelled Qasim, pronounced Carsim, just to make your life easier. I thought Batman Ninja was fun. I thought it was a little goofy. I enjoy anything as far as goofiness with Batman. I'm way down for that. I don't want to spoil it, but like, I wish there was more interaction with the villains. The villains just kind of seem to like show up and then done. And I wish there was just more like backstabbing. And I wish you had seen more of an example of feudal Japan represented from the checks and balances that exists in the Batman Rogues Gallery. Wasn't really represented. They were just kind of like, I'm the Penguin, so here's what my ship looks like. Also wasn't very ninja-y. I got way more Power Rangers vibes from Batman Ninja than Ninja. He didn't really do a lot of ninja stuff. Not a lot of stealth in that movie. But I loved it. It was fun. It was very entertaining. Yes, I can give you the #1 thing, and it's a suggestion that I've been giving to a lot of people for a long time when they talk about relationships, and I'm trying to perfect my language when I communicate it because it seems so traditional and boring and dull. I'll say it and you'll be like, duh, Jones, but I'm telling you, trust me, I've been married for 11 years now. I've known Amanda for about 16, and communication is the cornerstone. You have to be patient. You have to be able to argue well. You haven't lived together, Carson, but I don't know if you've traveled ever together. Traveling is the great... You don't know if you're in a good relationship or not until you travel and until you use a map to try to find some place or go to some event in some other city or some other state and try to figure out where you're going. It's an excellent test. And I think whenever I have seen our relationship / marriage level up between Amanda and I, it all has to do with communication. It all has to do with, there's this thing that you do that really frustrates me and I want to communicate it, but I don't want to make you angry, but it's important to me to communicate this because it's how I feel. So I hope you can listen to me and hope you can be open-minded when I say this. Your ability to communicate that as the person who is frustrated, your ability to hear that as the person who is frustrating is everything. It is the definition of the longevity of your relationship. Your marriage will last based on your ability to do that. Everything you're thinking is important. If you're thinking about providing for your spouse, if you're thinking about, financially supporting them, emotionally supporting them, you need to be able to listen. You need to be able to hear what the other person is saying, take their opinion for granted, and try to communicate how you are feeling at the same time. That is everything. Everything else, because I can't tell you what else is important because I don't know. And you might not know either. And you might not know until you have those conversations. Even now, there's things that Amanda brings up and I'm like, really? You get scared when you do that, or that thing makes you uncomfortable, or that weird behavior that I do you don't like. And so you get in these positions where your spouse will do something and you're like, I'm just going to let it go. And your ability to introduce it and tell that person, I don't want to start an argument. I don't want to get into this. I just want you to know how I feel about this. Those moments are key. Those moments have been transformative in my marriage as far as the two of us getting along, because we're able to, it really takes a lot for us to like yell at each other now because we don't want to. So it's like we can see the warning signs of stuff like that coming up. And some people just have so much pride and are just so frustrated with the person that they're dealing with that they never really get a chance to communicate and be honest with each other. And that sucks. So there you go. Good luck. And congrats to you, sir. Tony Knox, by the time you answer this, I will have 2 days left at Walt Disney World. What are the must-do things? And most importantly, what is the best food? It's tough because a lot of stuff is cordoned off in theme parks. If you haven't done... what is it? I almost said Atlantis. Everest. If you haven't done Expedition Everest, one of my favorite roller coasters in the world, go do that. It's really great. Focus on the exclusive stuff. Like I said, the Avatar stuff, the Toy Story at Hollywood Studios. Focus on stuff that's there and nowhere else. You know, Haunted Mansion's really great. It's better than the one that's here in California. But depending on where you travel in the future, you might get a chance to go on Pirates or don't do Star Tours. It's the same. It's exactly the same ride. So don't focus so much on things that go to Epcot and eat all the food. Like do things that are really go to Animal Kingdom and go on that safari tour. It's really interesting. Go see all the animals, see an animal show or something. See something that you know is only in that park, is only in Florida, and is nowhere else. Check out the hotels. The hotels are really cool. Specifically around Walt Disney World, there's a lot of, specifically the Magic Kingdom, the Disneyland of Disney World. There are a lot of fun hotels just in that little area. Like there was like a Hawaiian hotel. The only time I've ever been there, we just went in, got cocktails, ate some raw fish, and done. And like I love that hotel. We just walked around it, saw the torches and the whole tiki vibe, and I'm glad I checked it out. Cinderbite. In the aftermath of BlizzCon, we're going to talk about this a little bit more. The announcement of the Diablo Immortal mobile game has stirred the community of loyal gamers. Yes, I am one of them, but my question is more about the gaming journalists that are lashing back at their passionate community. I agree that the community is a bit extreme over this, but do you feel the gaming journalists should be on the side of the community, interviewing the players and getting their opinions on why such an outcry? Or do you feel it's better for the journalists to back the developer publishers, asking the same cookie-cutter questions and not ones that the fans want to know? Edit, journalists can be neutral too if you want to play it safe. For example, instead of asking questions for specifics, a possible PC port or a slim detail of another project to curb fans like, yes, D4 D2 remaster is cooking, be patient, journalists are asking throwaway ones like, is this available for iOS, Android? Or letting interviewers dodge questions about the game being a reskin. I understand some questions are skipped on purpose for varying reasons, i.e. not mentioning microtransactions pricing due to not being finalized, but several journalists are beginning to call the gamers entitled man babies and are suffering from toxic masculinity. Shouldn't journalists be above this and not lower their standards to name calling? Yeah, I don't know if I'll get into that in great detail later, but yeah, I mean, everybody should. I agree with being upset over it being only on a mobile platform, but it also stems from a background of having all previous games on the PC. Is it the platform of my choice for Blizzard game? Oh, it is the platform of my choice for Blizzard games. Everything is nice and neat right here in the Battle.net launcher. For 23 years, I've followed Blizzard since Warcraft 2 due to their foundation of storytelling in their IPs, but to alienate one of your tentpole communities at their biggest fan-driven event of the year just dumbstruck me. I agree with you at the end there. So lots going on. We've talked about this a lot. We had live reactions. We had reactions after the fact that just recently went up. Ben and Brad and Huber sat down and talked about BlizzCon in general and all the events and stuff that they learned after the opening ceremony. And we talked about it at length on the Easy Allies podcast. So I'm not going to go too much into it. I want to talk about the new stuff. And you specifically say, should journalists be neutral? I think it depends on the type of journalists. I think journalists should be consistent. I think journalists should be true to their message and true to their style of reporting. And obviously a Kyle Bossman is different from a Jason Schreier, is different from an Angry Joe. You know, it's like these are all different. You expect different temperaments from these type of people as far as how they approach something. So if you had a case where you were like, this one journalist is always this way, and then all of a sudden just on this one topic they completely reverted and are taking the developer side when they normally side with the community, I think we should always side with, I think we should default side with the consumer at all times. Sometimes that doesn't necessarily come into play because developers and publishers do nasty stuff. I don't think we should side with the consumer. I think we should side with the consumer in terms of Rockstar. I don't think we should necessarily side with the consumer in terms of this from BlizzCon, because I think everybody can learn from this lesson. I think everybody overreacted or underreacted or can take something from this and make their work better or make their opinions better in the future. But yeah, I'm sorry that this happened. Again, I can understand your frustrations, and I can visualize what you're talking about, but you don't give any specific examples, and I don't want to, I don't want you to tattle on people, and I don't want to point fingers, but I imagine there's all sorts of different, from what I am seeing, there's many, many different takes on this. So it might be frustrating to hear a specific journalist talk in a certain way or cover it or not ask the questions that you want to ask, but I don't think it's everybody that's asking this stuff. I'm definitely hearing people saying, where is Diablo 4? Where is the Diablo 2 remaster? When is it going to be ported to PC? I've heard those questions being asked. I've heard people discussing it. So I know that stuff's out there. Maybe there should be more of it. And one last thing, part of why them being like, is it available for iOS, Android? And you're like, ask the tough questions. They might already know the answers to those. I always have respected Jeff Keighley, because Jeff Keighley will ask questions to someone even though he knows they can't answer it, even though he knows they won't answer it, but he wants to get their face on camera being like, he wants to get that moment of them like, all right. Greg Miller did that at PSX. We point blank asked if we were going to be able to change our, PSN names, and here we are. So, they've announced it, but we haven't seen it yet. So sometimes I've been in that position where I'm like, I only have 3 questions. I only have so much time with this person. I'm not going to ask the questions I know the answers to. I'm not going to ask the questions I heard the person in front of me ask. I'm going to ask stuff so I can get new information and have the answers to that other question as well. So that might be happening, but I can't speak without specific examples. Rizzlemine17, how difficult is it to always remain unpolarized about hot topic issues as an Easy Allies member and public figure? Easy A has always been conservative and even tempered, but I'm sure even for you there are topics you feel polarized on. Imagine if the spectacular ending of Red Dead 2 was changed and butchered before release due to a controversial political or social group's influence. How difficult would it be for you to stay even-headed on air? I want to cover all angles on this question, but it's obvious that you're thinking of another example and comparing that to something that could possibly happen with Red Dead. I've never even come remotely close to something like this happening, so I don't know how difficult it would be to... I can't tell you how difficult it would be to react to something that I've never reacted to before, so it probably wouldn't be that hard, because that might not be something that... I'm not a stranger to having art change for weird reasons. There are movies that I love that I'll look back decades later and be like, whoa, that changed. Why? Like, that person got recast for some crazy reason, or originally the scene was going to play out some way and it changed at the last minute and I didn't know that. And so I experienced it and loved it and then learned that later. And okay, that could have been some other weird movie. But so yeah, I don't know. Just personally, I don't know if something like that would really grind my gears. How difficult is it? It's always difficult. It's always a challenge not to let your frustrations control you, not to let your anger speak for you. And meditation has carried me a long way in terms of, I do it before every Cup of Jones, as far as I've taken almost every single question from Cup of Jones. Like, we've had a lot of Cup of Dones. We've had a lot of uncomfortable discussions here on Cup of Jones, but I look forward to them because I want to get better at this. I want to get better at discourse. I want to get better at analyzing these things. I want to get better at communicating my opinions. So it's not that difficult because it's something I look forward to. And I can hopefully continue to do that in the future. Man, we got like 4 more pages of personal questions. David Warren, whenever I hear you or the Allies talk about watching movies or playing games on holiday, I wonder, do you have friends' social life outside of Easy Allies? Didn't you go to some crazy Halloween costume parties, etc., get wasted on eggnog over Christmas, or party till 3 a.m. on New Year's Eve? I understand it's hard to maintain such relationships with friends considering your time commitment to your work, but I'd still like to hear how this aspect of your life has changed as you near 40. Yeah, do you have friends? Yeah, I got lots of friends. It's interesting because through this job, I have so many friends that are just like right there. Like there's Rob Kirkovich. It's a great example. Rob, it's a friend of mine I used to work with at Game Trailers. I remember we were at a party one time and he introduced me to a friend of his and they said, "Oh, do you know Brandon?" And he said, "Yeah, we're one hangout away from actually becoming friends." And I was like, "Yeah, we are," because we just hang out at work functions and we never actually hang out in person. You can catch Rob as Sam something. He's on NCIS New Orleans. He's the nerdy forensic examiner. I guess he would be the nerdy whatever you would apply to him. He's also been in a bunch of other stuff, but used to edit for us, cut the Ultimate Duck Hunting review back in the day. And that's someone that's a friendship that I cherish. I'd never hang out with him. I have friends from high school that I love more than life itself, and I do not spend a lot of time with them. So it's really far in advance that I have to set up plans for us to hang out. One of the things that I cherish is my buddy Todd, who worked on a lot of the retros back in the day at Game Trailers, brilliantly GMs a ton of D&D campaigns that we have done, and every month or two I will head over to his place and hang out with his roommates, and we'll go through some tabletop. They have like a digital screen that we place the figures on that they can manipulate and open doors and change light sources and do weather and spell effects and label stuff, and that's so great. I have my friends from high school that I hang out with every now and then. I have obviously my family, tons of Amanda's friends. I'm in a book club where we read nerdy books. We're currently reading Fever Dream by George R.R. Martin, where if you're in Red Dead post game and you're just running around Red Dead 2, Fever Dream is excellent. If you're missing Halloween, it's about vampires, and it was fun listening to that audiobook and just running around and tagging animals in Red Dead. So it's nice to have those things that I know are coming up, that I know are scheduled, because I am the worst at making plans. So while I keep in touch with a lot of people, kind of funny, What's Good Games, IGN, GameSpot, like all my friends and all these other outlets, it's rare that I will see them or make plans to hang out with them. Andrea Renee just had a birthday party in Hollywood a couple months back, and she invited me to that, and so that was great to be like, yay, drinking, socializing, karaoke, yay. It's not an official games function. I love going to those things. I love it when I'm available for those. I am the worst at actually planning them. It's just my kryptonite. It's just something I've never been good at. Being like, ooh, let's go to that restaurant. I'm just not that person. And I feel bad. I wish I was. Do you have friends? And there's no way I could stay up till 3 a.m. on New Year's Eve. Couldn't do it. Chris Irely. Is there any game, either a sequel to a game franchise you've loved, or a standalone game you were super excited to play that you were really disappointed, let down by? Some games that are disappointing to me were Devil May Cry 2. Just lost the feeling. It's a way of what made the game, just lost the feeling its way of what made the first game so good. Final Fantasy 13, annoying characters, nonsensical, confusing plot, and a game that was extremely linear for about 30 hours before opening up. And most recently, Metal Gear Solid 5. I love Metal Gear Solid 5. I didn't like Final Fantasy 13, and I actually liked Devil May Cry 2, but I can see why it's bad. I didn't know at the time. I thought it was just an easy action game. I would also like to focus on MGS5 specifically because I love that franchise and was excited to play it and saw all the praise it got in the reviews, yours included. And when I played it and beat it, I was confused on how it even got such high reviews in the first place. The game felt like it needed at least another year of development. At least. Between the undercooked plot, the underutilized cast, where several characters fell by the wayside, 2 vast open world maps with very little to do, interact with, and even though it was probably the series' best controls, the actual gameplay itself was a repetitive bore, with the majority of missions always taking place in the same 3 or 4 villages with little variety to them. I don't see how the game got such high scores. I mean, I know it was Kojima's swan song for the franchise, and I do love his work, and it wasn't his fault Konami screwed him over and decided to release the game when it would probably needed more time, but I didn't think that the game deserved the high marks it got, and I think at best the game was a 6.5 based on its own merits alone. You spent more of this comment talking about Metal Gear Solid 5 than actually asking the question. Steep comes to mind. Was really excited for Steep. This is this game where you can hang glide and parachute and snowboard and ski, and you can record videos and do replays, and you fly all over the mountain. And man, was that game boring. And I know they've released a lot of DLC after the fact that has improved it. I have not played that DLC, so I cannot speak to its quality, but and a lot of people are like, haha, 6.5 is harsh, but like, yeah, it's his opinion. And he played and finished the game, so you got to give him credit for that. Yeah, I remember that was one that I definitely went below my expectations. I have yet to get addicted to Stardew Valley. It's coming out on mobile. Maybe I'll give it the 3rd try, but Stardew Valley is just not clicking with me for some reason. I don't know why, but I don't think that speaks to the game's quality. It just speaks to me being dumb or something. I don't want to get too involved in a Metal Gear Solid 5. This is a long episode, but I do want to say one thing that I did like about Metal Gear Solid 5, because you said the map was barren and there was not a lot to do, and you kept going back to the same 3 or 4 places. I kind of liked that it was barren because it was a military zone, because it was on lockdown, and because you had these patrols driving back and forth. Like, you had to pay attention no matter what you were doing. At any time you would hear a Jeep and like, ah, crap, I got to duck down. And it's not as simple as like, oh, there's a dumpster, a building I can get behind. It's like, I'm in the middle of the desert, so I really got to plan ahead of like looking through my binoculars and seeing, because like I'm going to be in the wide open when I try to get closer to this thing. And so it was fun when like helicopters would come in and drop you, and you just kind of like take a step back and look at the big picture and try to figure out, how do I want to infiltrate this thing and how do I want to get in and get out. I actually, surprisingly, and I understand this might not make sense at all, kind of liked the retreading of environments in Metal Gear Solid 5. Because that game is about stealth, it's about mastering your environment. It was fun to go back to environments I had mastered. It was fun, you know, them being like, oh, you remember that area we sent you to go rescue that guy? Go back there and just kill everybody. And I'm like, with pleasure. or go back and kidnap as many soldiers as you can, or go back and search for this equipment. And it's like, cool, I'm going to have less of a frustrating time searching for that item or person or completing that mission because I know that place. And I think that's something that a lot of stealth games don't have, because, you know, even like Call of Duty, like when you go to a mission, it's like, okay, here's your 5-minute briefing on this mission. You're going to be going into this area. Here's this kitchen. You're going to drop down in here and you're going to do that. Okay, good luck. It's like Hitman. It's like you rarely finish a Hitman mission on the first try because you're like, where am I? What's going on? Where do those people move? What's this room? What does this door lead to? Like, there's just a lot of trial and error and trying to figure out the environment and memorize it and understand what's going on. And you know that if you were actually like a Navy SEAL, if you were actually a spy or some kind of covert operative and you were going behind enemy lines, you would have way more information than you do as a player. Like, you would have done way more research. You've done tests. I love in Modern Warfare where you do the mission, the training mission, where you go through the wooded flats that is a pre-built simulation of the ship you're about to go on later, and then you do the mission and you actually see the ship and what it looks like, and you're like, oh, I know where this door goes because I trained for that and I know where that is. And so that helped me kind of get in the mindset of what a soldier like that must be like, what it must be like to be Agent 47, where you're like, I know everybody in this building, I know where everyone's going to go, I'm one step ahead before I even do the first mission, before I even try this mission for the first time. And that was fun. My one random takeaway. But yeah, the ending of MGS5 is very, very frustrating. Alex Pisa, let's keep the Red Dead train going. Some people really don't like the realistic aspect of it. I love those details in games. Do you think some games have made more people prone to just blazing through a game and some just don't want the slower pace? And do you think this will give rise to more detailed games? I think detailed games are on the rise. I don't think detailed games are on the rise because of Red Dead. I think people are intimidated by Rockstar. I think people are scared when Rockstar announces a release date. Everyone's like, ah, like they all get out of the way. But I don't think, you know, because part of what makes Red Dead magical is the exorbitant and, as we have recently learned, extremely unhealthy amount of work that was put into the game. And so a lot of the vast majority of publishers are not willing to do that, or developers rather. Yeah, it was a surprising sentiment, but it does make sense to me more and more, where people are just like, and that is something that, we did have a comment earlier where somebody said, you don't really talk about that the game isn't for everybody in Red Dead. But I did take careful note, and I showed a picture of you chopping wood, or showed a clip of Arthur chopping wood, which is an activity in that game that does nothing. You don't get wood from it. You don't get experience. It doesn't increase your dexterity. It was not for a mission. I just walked by and it said chop wood, and I was like, sure. And I chopped wood, and it happened to be at night, and the lighting was really pretty, and so I moved around and got a shot and chopped wood for a little bit, and had a blast doing it. But I imagine some people are like, chopping wood? I said that on Twitter, actually, and somebody replied, and they were like, why? And I'm like, because I like doing that. And if you ask why, you just answered your own question. If you're like, what? Like, why? Like, and actually, I had an interesting debate way back in the day when Battlefield 2 came out. And one of the things that I didn't like is, and keep in mind, I didn't have a lot of history with the Battlefield franchise and have not played a lot of Battlefield games since, but you would run over to a helicopter and you would click on the helicopter, like, I want to fly this helicopter, and then you would pop into the cockpit and take off. And I was like, oh, it'd be neat to get in the helicopter. It'd be neat to actually, like, animate going up the ladder and getting into the helicopter and then closing the door, and then you take off. And I was like, I look forward to the future of games where we can add that. And I was playing with my coworkers at Game Trailers at the time, and some of them argued they will never add that, because why? Like, I'm playing an action game, I want to get in that helicopter and take off. I'm like, it's an interesting line of a lot of the patience of gamers and whether that is a benefit. To some people, they're just like, get on the horse already. But like, I like that he takes his time. I like that the horse will shake its head and maybe not walk away immediately. You know, like I love these little details because I'm all about immersion. And for some people, immersion is speed, is access. I'm immersed when you just give me the stuff. Whereas like if you keep the stuff away from me, if you give me weapons that will break in Breath of the Wild or give me guns that need to be cleaned in Red Dead, it actually helps me attach myself to these things more. It makes it more believable. It makes the passage of time feel more real. And I think that's something that Red Dead does extremely well. I am not going to tell somebody that plays Overwatch every day that they're going to enjoy the pace of Red Dead, because they probably won't. Like, they're probably used to me being like, I play primarily multiplayer games. I play a lot of COD. I play a lot of Battlefield. Play a lot of Overwatch. Don't have the pace for something like Hitman, great example. The pace of Hitman is very slow, very deliberate. And I think some games benefit for that. I think some games like that are for some people. And so in the review, I made a careful point to say this game is very slow. So that was kind of my way of saying it's not for everybody. James Kennedy, after listening to the Allies talk about the lineup of games being released on it, I've been thinking a lot about the PlayStation Classic. More and more, I question if Sony ever truly understood the monstrous undertaking required in order to pull it off. The PS1 has a ridiculous lineup of excellent games, which may at first seem like an easy win for Sony, but there aren't many core games that are that are centrally associate with people's love for the system, a factor which makes Nintendo consoles easier fits for this type of plug-and-play console. I decided to ask a bunch of friends to give me a list of their top 10 PS1 games. These lists barely shared a single title. I asked 7 friends, so it wasn't exactly a crazy sample size, but still, my list would have definitely included Super Puzzle Fighter 2 Turbo, and look at how it was received by your panel. How is Sony ever going to please their fans with only 20 games? The PlayStation Classic could have had 50 games included at launch and still not satisfied a number of top 10 lists for fans. Lastly, once you consider how dependent on securing third-party licenses the classics need to be, it just seems like an almost impossible task. Don't get me wrong, Sony was far from nailing it. However, it is hard for me to think how they were ever going to succeed. What do you think, Jones? Was this essentially impossible? P.S. While it wouldn't have made my 20, Mr. Driller is a fantastic game. Yeah, so I don't mean to make fun of games that we don't know. We just have to trust our first impressions. And sometimes people enjoy our first impressions being incorrect or being over-exaggerated. Yeah, I think one of the other issues, too, my nose is very itchy, apologies, is you got the Nintendo Classic and the Super Nintendo Classic, and then we've got, Intellivision's building their own thing. We got a Genesis one, and now Sony is jumping into this new gen. Now, this is the PlayStation 1, not Dreamcast, but Saturn? Right? Wait, what? No. What? What was Sega doing at the time? Was it the Saturn? Basically this era of games. Boy, I'm tired. And it's the first foray into that. So it's not only the PlayStation, it's you're dealing with a much more prolific era. You know, we just got more games. And I think that doesn't mean that there weren't a ton of NES games and a ton of SNES games, but the classics were really clear. You can really look at those systems and know, yeah, these games were all Fester's Quest does not compete with Super Mario Brothers 3. There's a clear line between those two things. So there's a lot of licensing, a lot of just pumping out games really fast. And the quality gap, I think, was huge, where starting with the PlayStation 1 and especially the PlayStation 2, there were so many, just a crazy amount of games for the system. So it's when you could really first see, as a console owner, not having to play the required games, and that's what's interesting for me, to really have never been that invested in the Metroid franchise or Earthbound, or there's just a lot of games that I missed even in those eras. And you look at the PlayStation 1, all sorts of games that I missed. And so I think what you're saying is that true of the generation as well. So it was the Saturn, I guess. PlayStation Saturn spanned Saturn and then a bit of Dreamcast. Okay. Got it. Yeah, I knew Dreamcast was after Saturn. That's what I want to confirm. Okay. Didn't own a Saturn. Thank you, Jeff Groats, for owning a Sega Saturn so I could play it. Matt Bolenbach. How do you feel? Last personal question, by the way. Kyle might be waiting outside, ready for the showcase. How do you feel about encouraging someone to vote along party lines? I understand drawing political lines can simplify certain aspects on a grand scale, but saying vote red or vote blue is dangerous, and that it encourages following a political party blindly. While this is less of an issue during the presidential election, that it generally is rather binary, As that generally is rather binary, it is especially concerning in local and state elections. Would it be better to see people saying, educate yourselves on the candidates, the issues, and where those candidates stand on said issues, then vote for the candidates you feel will best represent you and your causes? I'm not going to get too much into this. Politically, things are heated, obviously. I will just say yes to that statement. That's a great way to put that. Unfortunately, it doesn't fit on a t-shirt. This is an idyllic statement. I know it's not always easy for one to educate themselves with good information, as reporting from most outlets, even local affiliates, tends to lean one way or the other. And I did a lot of research on our local propositions here in Southern California, and even those, all I'm doing is just reading other people's opinions about them. I'm just trying to collate as many of those as I possibly can to come up with my own opinion. Unbiased, fact-based candidate and issue summaries are tough to come by. Some blame can be placed on the imperfection of our entire representative republic system. Some can be placed on irresponsible and incorrect reporting by news outlets. More can still be placed on the ludicrous amounts of money spent by political action committees on ads that are more often than not disingenuous. At some point, though, the onus is on the individual to realize the difficulties therein and to do work to educate themselves. We can all agree encouraging people to vote is a good thing. I hope those same people also encourage others to educate themselves further beyond simple party lines. Yes. Obviously, you should educate yourselves. Obviously, you should make your own decision. Obviously, here at Easy Allies, we don't want, like, it's not like the official, political party of Easy Allies. Like, we're not like that. We have issues. We have opinions and issues, opinions on all sorts of a variety of issues. And I never want to speak for 8 other people, including myself, on any show that I do, especially Cup of Jones, when none of them are in the room. Kyle's outside, and he's just like, I have opinions about this. But I think, and I've seen this a lot on Twitter. I'm going to keep this as safe as possible. Don't worry. I know you're like, should I bail on this episode? I think you should I think it's okay telling people to vote. And I saw a lot of people that were upset about that because they were like, don't vote, vote educated. Just vote. Just get it in your head, get the concept. Because I think once you vote, you're much more likely to vote again and again and again. Just get in the idea of voting. I didn't vote. When I turned 18, I didn't vote right away. It was stupid. I was just lazy. It had nothing to do with, like, I don't think my vote will matter, or I just woke up on that day and was like, I got work, like I just didn't want to do it. And it wasn't until later in life I realized its impact, realized my place, my responsibility, and not only now my responsibility to vote, my responsibility to tell you to vote. So I think, while obviously you want somebody to vote along the same way that you want to vote, you want everybody to vote the same way you want to vote. Obviously, you want people to be educated. I think step one, and that entire process of understanding the best way to do that, is just go vote. It's just go see what's on the ballot, see what these things are, and then if you didn't educate yourself enough, like I have in the past, like first time I voted, I looked back and was like, wow, I kind of winged some of those, so maybe I'll do a little more research this time. I met Amanda. Amanda's extremely studious about these kind of things. She's providing me with a lot of different information on these topics. And so as I've gotten older, I've gotten better at that process. I don't think just because you want to educate yourself, you'll necessarily be good at it. I think it is something like any skill, like anything that you do on an annual basis. You will get more experienced, you'll be more comfortable with it, more confident in your decisions, but you can't do that until you do it. And so I think the most important thing, step one, always just vote, put it in your calendar. Make that a part of your life. Make that something that you agree to yourself that you are going to do. And so I feel fine saying that. There you go. That's my stance. Let's do a very quick editorial. I'm gonna throw out my lower third, even though there's no music underneath it. I'll just throw that up there. It should go away now. I noticed that something got unclicked, but I clicked it. So that the lower third should go away without me having to click it. There it goes. The question comes from Atoshigami. Now that Defy Media has shut down completely, what are the chances of getting their office, which is located in Beverly Hills, as a new studio? It would show a poetic justice that EZA as a whole deserves. Thank you so much. We would have to hire 150 new employees to fill the space that Defy Media had when we were at that either one of their studios. We did move on to a different space. It's funny, when you say Defy Media, I think of one office, but then they had another office as well. Might have spoke to maybe some of the financial difficulties that they had, that they were like, we like both offices. And it's like, just move. Because I think some executives were like, I'm not moving. And some executives in the other office were like, well, I'm not moving. And they had like this bizarre impasse for a really long time. But if you didn't hear, and I'll talk about this very quickly, Defy Media is not around anymore. They closed their doors, and it's weird for a company like that to do it, because it's not like, that's like if Viacom shut down. You know, it's like if Game Trailers is at Viacom, it's not like them getting rid of us, one entity of this parent company. That is the parent company that went under. And that sucks. That's fascinating. It's weird to think of from our perspective of trying to get a sense of what the bigger picture was like working at Defy and how they treated their other channels. But I just want to talk. I just want to talk positively about Defy. I think it was very easy at Easy Allies to kind of thumb your nose at Defy Media and to. Even though I'm grateful for what they did. I mean, they gave us this tremendous gift. I'm here in my garage at a desk talking to a couple hundred people watching this that are a part of an 8,000 patron group of people financially supporting us. Wouldn't have happened if Defy Media hadn't taken the steps that they did. But Defy Media was a big company. There were a lot of people at Defy Media, and there were a lot of people at Defy Media that had absolutely nothing to do with any of the production that happened at Game Trailers. I almost called Easy Allies almost called Game Trailers Easy Allies. Yeah, never do that. I'm glad that the wheel is finally turning in the other direction. And so I just want to give credit to these people, because when I was at Viacom, I learned a lot. I learned a lot about internet video production, obviously. Learned a lot about editing, learned a lot about managing employees at meetings, managing editors, managing events. Learned a lot about TV production when we did All Access for E3. Learned a lot about just managing companies and what it meant to be an editor-in-chief and how to cultivate creative ideas. And we really had to think a lot outside the box a lot of the time. But then we moved to Defy. And Defy was a strictly YouTube company. And that was very new. That was interesting to meet people from Clever and Screen Junkies and Smosh and see what they did and how they did it. To meet Andrea Renee and work with her, and she was very involved in Smosh, and obviously has moved on to other things before this event happened. But I learned so much. It was so eye-opening in such a short amount of time. It was also very scary. It was probably the worst 2 years of my life because of the stress and just the fear of having all of that dumped on our shoulders. And clearly Defy being like, we operate differently. But I just want to tip my hat to all of these places, because I learned so much from Clever about, if you're not familiar with Clever, there's two V's, Clevver. It's a lot about women's fashion and a lot of celebrity stuff, a lot of celebrity gossip and, makeup tips and hairstyles, stuff like that. That might be doing them an injustice. I didn't actually watch a tremendous amount of their content. I just worked with these people and I saw them producing their stuff, and every now and then I would see the stage and that they would use and the different sets that they would build, and specifically with Clever, how they would handle their talent. Clever was a very host-driven thing. Like, you had Smosh, and obviously they were hosts and personalities, but Smosh was almost directly involved in the creation of so much of their content. Same thing with Warp Zone and Screen Junkies, which we'll get to. But Clever was much more of, there was a definite separation between producers and writers, and then the hosts coming in and doing that stuff. And so it was interesting seeing how those hosts were treated, how those hosts communicated to their audience via social media. And so while, Game Trailers and Clever were just night and day at the time, and they had almost zero to no synergy within Defy Media, still learned a lot from that company. I will always be grateful to Screen Junkies, because they were very involved in the acquisition of that studio space that we got for GT Live. And GT Live was tremendous for me. I mean, that was like my baby, and I learned a lot from producing that show and grew a lot as a performer and as a host. And it helped GT Time. The production value went up considerably when we started working in that space. And so it was fun to work in that space, fun to work on the TriCaster, fun to work with Ian, fun to produce the Rock Band Battle of the Bands. Like, just so much fun stuff happened in that room. And Screen Junkies was largely, as you can tell now, well, not anymore, but the movie fights and a lot of the shows that they produced there were still done in that space. And they even built another space in the corner where we used to do group streams. So if you go watch me play GoldenEye with Huber back in the day at GT, that the gray paneling, not the blue stage that we had in the other studio, but with the little pink or blue lights and stuff like that in the background, that set became the TV fights or video game fights set. And so even when they rebuilt that set in another location, it was interesting being like, okay, you got monitors, you got a desk, you got mics, and just seeing how all of that was set up. Obviously, we'll be taking a lot of those lessons and putting them into the new studio studio space when we acquire it. Also, always jealous of Screen Junkies because Honest Trailers is one of the smartest ideas. You know, such a clever idea for a show, and it was so fun seeing them produce it. So jealous they had they still do, and hopefully we'll be producing this stuff in the future. But the title person, don't know their name, at Screen Junkies that produces the titles for Honest Trailers should, you know, just get a Webby just for that. Like the fact that they are able to recreate stuff in the Screen Junkies font, or just to have the words Honest Trailers, you know, be morphed into so many different fonts and styles and effects and stuff like that. I have a lot of credit. I have a lot of respect for that. I think that's really cool. Smosh obviously had a ton of carryover with Smosh, worked with all of those guys on multiple occasions. Shout out to Matt Robb, who, if you're not familiar, ran a lot of the stuff that Smosh did, and was just outclassed immediately. When I came to Defy Media, I met Matt, and I was like, wow, this guy's so much better at his job than I am at mine, and there's so much that I can learn from him and how they do this stuff. Obviously, the Smosh audience is just incredibly massive, and they're a different group. Like, I don't think about Smosh and beat myself up about maybe, like, you know, growth that we don't have here at Easy Allies, or goals that we're not meeting, but they're still a juggernaut, and it was really interesting seeing the way that they would carry themselves around each other, seeing the type of content that they would do, seeing what was possible when you had cultivated this community of people that want to watch people streaming games, watch people be goofballs around each other, and the type of stuff that they do. They would just do big events. They would fly all over the world to check stuff out, and it was really fun just being near them and sharing in that experience of the fun stuff that they were producing. And again, learned a lot. My final shout out, and one of the most heartbreaking things, because I think Smosh can really land on their feet. I think Clever is a brand that can definitely survive this. I think Screen Junkies has definitely had some interesting hits to their armor in the last months and years, and I think is capable of surviving that. Who I hope survives it, probably more than anybody, is the Warp Zone. Warp Zone was right next to us. Our offices were around Warp Zone. Like, we moved into Defy, and Warp Zone was in the far corner, and we were like, what's up, Warp Zone? We're Game Trailers. And it's like, if you were in the Warp Zone room, you could not escape the type of stuff. Like, you would just hear us talking all day. You could hear Huber all day. You could hear Matt Blair, you know, talking to Bloodworth and myself about posting videos all day. And they were just in this little tiny room. And so you had all of us at cubicles. I had my own office, Blood at his own office. We had a capture room. We had a set. We had 2 sets at one point. You know, we're moving all over the place. And here Warp Zone is producing this incredible content, and they're just cooped up in this tiny room. They're, you know, and I haven't worked in an environment like that in a long time, where I'm just like right next to everybody. You see the IGN room is fascinating, which is this huge room with just lots of people in it. For the resources that they were given from Defy Media, the talent that they expressed, and the stuff that they were able to produce, I tip my hat to those gentlemen. They were just really nice, always really generous to us. Ever since we left Defy Media, I see them almost on, you know, at the same time every single Comic-Con and at events. I'll bump into them, and they're always there with a smile and a big hug, and they're just the nicest dudes. And it sucks that this happened, and I hope they, if you haven't, go check out their stuff. They do a lot of a cappella songs and funny bits and skits and sketches and costume and makeup, and they're just really funny and really creative and really clever. And it was really great to move in and have the people right next to us, like in our office environment, be as passionate, if not more passionate, about making weird stuff for the games industry and playing games themselves. It was fun getting their opinions and having them check out games early with us. And I will miss all of them dearly. And so basically, obviously, I have a chip on my shoulder for Viacom, and I have a chip on my shoulder for Defy. I will have those forever. But going through processes like that, it is a tremendous learning experience. And I just want to say cheers to everybody at Defy Media who is now looking for another job, or possibly trying to reforge their job within another company or independently. And it's not an easy thing to do. I can definitely speak from obvious experience. But I would not have had the knowledge I had now without all of those people in some form or another. So cheers to them. A work well done. That was a fascinating company. And I don't want to get all Michael Pachter Hogue Law about possibly why that company went under, but they definitely made lots of weird financial decisions. But that's for another editorial on another day. I have 29 minutes to set up all of the assets for the community showcase, which will be at 1 p.m. Pacific time here on Easy Allies on Twitch. We're on Patreon/YouTube right now. It'll be on Twitch. Twitch.tv/Easy Allies in about a half an hour. Tune in. I will sit down with Kyle Bossman and we will go through all of the community showcase stuff. My gardener will show up and make a lot of noise outside. It's going to be a great time. We really have some tremendous submissions this time that are really extraordinary, and I'm looking forward to Kyle checking them out. I'm looking forward to spending more time with you and working diligently to try to lose my voice today. Talk straight for like 6 hours. I'm going to take the biggest nap at 4 o'clock today. I'm so excited. But before that happens, let's go through some fun stuff for the showcase. And I will see you again next Tuesday right here for another episode of Cup of Jones. Cheers, everybody.